We have a quorum, thank you. All right, I'll take a motion then for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Action carries. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of October 4th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries as well. On to reports of appointees to outside boards, commissions, and committees. Anybody have any? Commissioner Bene.
Thank you, President Forney. There were two meetings on October 11th, one audit committee, one BET. For the audit committee, we received and filed a report on the Minneapolis Emergency Communications Center. The project is called Third Party and Intergovernmental Relationship Consultation Report. And it's essentially, that center is essentially emergency dispatch, and the outside or the third parties from the city's point of view are Hennepin Healthcare, the University of Minnesota Police Department, and the MPRB PD Police Department. So this was a staff requested audit from that department, and it has to do, I think, with new people running that department and not fully understanding all of the agreements that have made over time, what's active, what's not active. But then also, I think, to make sure that there are proper controls in place for security and things like that. So there may be some more work coming in that direction to the park board eventually. The other report was a receive and file of another project. It was a revenue and collections phase 1, and this is reviewing controls for the intake of money at the city, cash, credit cards, checks, money orders, online, in person, et cetera. There was even some kind of fax machine thing that was still happening. And there will be a phase 2 of that project in the coming months that will include the MPRB. So that sounds like a fairly extensive bit of work for us. That's it. Oh, sorry, BET, I'm sorry. Third quarter report from the city controller on the city's general fund, and also we approved the 2024 BET calendar. That's it.
Thank you for the report. Commissioner Alper.
Yeah, thanks, President Forney. I just want to let you all know that at the Planning Commission on Monday, we approved exterior building materials guidelines, which there was a couple different coalitions that spoke to us about EIFS, EIFS, and how that material has changed over time. So we, as a commission, voted to add EIFS with drainage as a material that's allowable in the guidelines. How it has to do with parks, I believe, is that it broadens the affordable options for housing, and I think that's important and fits in line with our strategies of what we're going for here, and also more climate resilient material. So I just want to let you know that, so that recommendation has been forwarded to the City Council for approval.
Thank you for that report. I'm going to ask Council Rice if he would speak to, we've had some conversations about our rules as far as the times of speaking, and so I asked Council Rice if he could speak to our rules regarding that, just to remind us all.
Excuse me, thank you, Madam President. Yes, you should have at your desk a board meeting rules in boldface sections pertaining to speaking by commissioners and timelines for board and committee work. These come from the board's current rules, and I've noticed in the last couple of meetings there's been some questions about speaking and order and such, but this is just a quick review. And these are your rules that have been adopted by other boards, but this board, and if you don't like the rules, you can change them, but like it or not, these are the rules of the road, and so it's kind of the common understanding about how the board functions. A key part of this is that the rules are really to be enforced by the president or the committee chairs, the president at the board level, the committee chairs at the committee level. That's rules A and B. And they're also, the rules direct that the president and the chair keep the agenda moving along and focused and deliberate and done in an orderly fashion. We also have Robert's rules that says you're a debating group or a deliberative body, so you want to be orderly, courteous, and disciplined, and part of that is speaking and balanced out. But probably for the purposes of things that I've noticed, C, It will also be the president, committee's chair responsible when discussion goes beyond the scope of action to respectfully bring the discussion back to the focus of the action and strictly enforce time limits, and that's kind of the issue that President Forney asked me to look into. So there's two rules. I call it the 3-3 rule and the 3-1 rule. In committee, each board member has up to 3 minutes to speak on an issue with 3 minutes of rebuttal, which is basically a second speech, and no interruptions are permitted. And you can, if in a committee or at the board, if you want to, somebody needs more time, somebody needs to make a motion. It's not really a debatable motion, and it's just, but it is a motion to say, okay, somebody wants to talk for a longer period of time. And so you can bring it up and you can suspend the rules in committee and move on by that. Now, the 3-1 rule applies at the board. Each commissioner on each matter has 3 minutes to speak and 1 minute for rebuttal. And that's why there's also this issue about questions. The secretary, Ms. Ringgold, now Ms. Brooks, you see the time. If the commissioner asks a question during their speech, the clock will be paused so it doesn't cut into your 3 minutes, and then the question's answered, and then you move along. And then really the last one that's probably of import, I'm not on the clock, but the commissioner or President Forney always makes sure I don't talk too much because I tend to babble, but that's fair. Section 3, time will be established by board, and so a lot of times that the board president does have, or the committee does have, if there's an important matter, to frame a matter and say you're only spend 20 minutes on a study report item, so that if that's all the board has, and if you haven't done it, the board president or committee chair can say, oops, we're done, we'll lay it over. So one matter doesn't consume all the board's time. You know, we are governed by Robert's rules, that's standard, and obviously the board did adopt a rule years ago that, you know, it's important to read all the materials and come prepared. Not that no one's not doing that, but that's, and to the extent that you can, the rules encourage you to talk to the chair or staff or the president or the superintendent, anyone before the meeting, so if you can get some basic questions done, you save time at the board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Done in a timely manner. Anyway, we will move on to the consent business. Somebody like to move our 2 items there?
I would move the consent agenda as a slate.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those actions carry. On to the planning committee. You have some items to move here.
Yes, President Forney, thank you. I'd like to move Resolution 2023-184, resolution granting a permanent easement to the City of Minneapolis for the Nokomis Avenue Storm Sewer Outfall Project located within the Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail.
Second.
Commissioner Alper?
Yeah, thanks. I'm wondering if staff could talk to the piece about where the BMP is located compared to the non-BMP area where the fee is being calculated.
President Forney and Commissioner Alper, we have representatives from the city. Sorry.
Thank you.
Commissioner Forney and President Forney, Commissioner Alper, we have representatives from city staff here. Lisa Goddard from Surface Water and Storm Sewers can probably best respond.
All right. Oops, commissioners and board president. Could you actually repeat that question? I missed a little bit of the nuance in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've requested a fee for a permanent easement from the City of Minneapolis based on a calculation of a specific area that's being impacted. A piece of it was said that we're not asking for the easement because there's a benefit to Minneapolis residents, and the other piece of it, that's how we're calculating the easement.
Okay. And you're just wondering where the BMP is in relation to the other part of it? Is that, okay.
Yes.
That one. Okay, there we go. So, does it pick it up okay if I'm over here? Yeah?
If you
Go
can
ahead.
bend it over just a little bit.
Okay, let's do that. There we
Perfect.
go. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see on the map here on the screen, this pipe coming down, or these lines down here, represent the pipe coming through. The right-of-way line is right here. The blue line represents what we are proposing for the easement boundary. And then this round shape here is the actual water quality unit where the sediment and trash and so forth will be captured. And then, I think I lost my mouse, but the rectangular piece to the left of that is the diversion from the storm trunk into the water quality unit, and then the overflow continues on to the creek. So the area that's shaded in that kind of light gray here is the area that we were talking about as being above and beyond what we would have asked for if it was just the pipe project and without the water quality unit. So that's the exemption area. Does that address your question?
Yeah, thanks. And I believe the material said that the city is going to be putting the trail back together with high-quality material. Is that correct?
Right, we'll be putting it down so it can withstand the weight of the back trucks, the vacuum trucks, and then, because once they're fully loaded with the water and the sediment, they do get kind of heavy and they sit there for a little while, and if it happens to be like a hot sunny day, we want it to be the kind of material that won't rut if there's a heavy truck sitting on hot asphalt.
And what's the source of the city funds that are going to pay for this easement fee?
Actually, one of my other people over here could better answer with more specifics, but generally it comes from our stormwater utility fee. So we've got some of the money that goes into doing water quality improvement projects, and some of the money goes to like pipe repair, pipe replacements, and some of it, I believe, goes to outfall repairs. Yeah, okay, she gave me the thumbs up over there. So yeah, so the water quality component comes out of that water quality fund, and then the rest of the work is going to come out of the outfall fund.
How did you pick this new alignment versus the old alignment, which presumably wouldn't have needed an easement?
Right, so the old pipe, you can barely see it, it kind of snakes, does kind of this S shape through here. It just clips that little bit of the park area. There are two reasons why we were interested in sliding it over. We were initially just talking about moving it just a little bit downstream, which is to the right on the page, just to get away from that bridge, the wing wall, the support, because the bridge is only being like rehabilitated. It's not being fully reconstructed. So the structural elements would not be modified at all when the bridge does eventually get rehabilitated. So we wanted to get away from undermining that structural component of the wing wall there. And then the other thing is we talked with some of the park board staff and the watershed staff. We were talking about how does this project help or potentially hinder the ability to do what was in the master planning project. And so if we kept it as close as possible to its original alignment, it would become harder to create that surface BMP that's shown in the master plan, because there's a surface BMP that's kind of tucked away over under this box somewhere generally. And there was also like the talk of meandering or restoring the creek somehow. So getting it even a little bit further more to the east helped us provide a way to send off water from this pipe to, say, a future BMP or address potential future realignments or remeandering of the creek.
Okay.
And then one last thing, and it also helped us miss those trees that you see between the existing outfall and the new outfall? Those little tiny, kind of blob circle, yeah.
I thought they were bushes. Great. Thanks. Thanks for those comments. I appreciate it. I don't have any further questions, but I think at this point I'd like to move. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd like to move my first amendment. I think that what we've seen, and I'm going to read it. Okay, so it's Amendment 1. It's in red. So it would strike the words, whereas MPRB staff has requested compensation for the proposed permanent easement given the impact to regional parkland. So that would be, we'd strike that. And then the new language would be, whereas aging stormwater infrastructure and unaddressed maintenance leads to costly damage from pipe failures, poorly performing stormwater infrastructure, et cetera. Whereas Minneapolis residents have an interest in working stormwater infrastructure and regular maintenance. Whereas all Minneapolis property owners pay a stormwater utility fee, generating $45.2 million annually across the city, the majority of which is used by the city of Minneapolis for storm sewer infrastructure maintenance, rehabilitation, engineering, street cleaning, capital improvement projects, and regulatory activities. Whereas MPRB currently receives a portion of this fee, $700,000, as a reimbursement for water quality monitoring and stormwater education activities, and as a property owner pays approximately $450,000 annually, netting $250,000, whereas MPRB requested and is estimated to receive a greater portion of this stormwater utility fee for a total of $1.324 million in 2024 minus the $450,000 payment, netting $874,000, whereas the language of the amendment says, it is almost certain that the project is being paid for by stormwater utility fees, but this was just confirmed. And thus, Minneapolis property owners, whereas the majority of MPRB's annual operating budget comes from property taxes paid for by Minneapolis residents, whereas the charging of an easement fee of $58,429 for this necessary stormwater infrastructure repair represents an additional fee that will ultimately be borne by the taxpayers of Minneapolis. And then adding the resolved clause, resolved that the Board of Commissioners does not request compensation for this project.
Second? Okay. Does it need to be seconded?
And
Is there something more you want to say?
no, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bennett?
Her light's not on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Musich.
I believe Commissioner Thompson turned her light on before me, so I would defer.
I'm so sorry. Okay, Commissioner Thompson, go for it.
Sorry, my mind suddenly went blank. Just trying to get right to it, is the only resolved clause that I'm seeing is about not requesting compensation for the project. Is that correct, Commissioner Elber? And the motivation for that is precisely, I mean, I heard the whereases, but can you explain to me the motivation for that? Specifically, the taxpayer idea?
May I respond to that, President
Would you
Forney?
like her to
Yes,
respond?
please, thank you.
Please.
Absolutely. I feel that we all have an infrastructure across our city, and we all have an interest, in working infrastructure across our city, particularly with aging stormwater infrastructure. As I believe this is the case with this pipe. I think, as we've heard from the representative tonight, that this is going to have the immediate tangible benefits as shown by the area in gray, but it also speaks to a larger plan. I really just, I don't see the point. I think it doesn't make sense to take more money from, I want to be clear that this funding that we would get for the $58,429, it would go into our land acquisition fund. It wouldn't go at the present moment towards additional stormwater or water quality improvements, which I think would be frankly more in line with the stormwater utility fee, which is the source of the funding for the easement. So that's why I'm proposing this. I think we need to take a holistic perspective on this. That's what I'm trying to do.
I respect that. I respectfully disagree. I'll just restate what I said at our last meeting. We all are funded by the taxpayers of Minneapolis. So I view this as we're permanently giving up land, and this is just the taxpayers are shifting funds essentially from one city organization to another one in lieu of having our land. So I do 100% support us charging that and will not support the amendment. But thank you. I appreciate for clarifying.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. So I have two issues with this amendment that are going to prevent me from supporting it. The first being that this amendment to an easement resolution is effectively trying to make a policy change to the way that we manage land within the park system. And if we want to have a debate about the appropriateness of our land policy, we should do so. But by saying we should permanently prevent the use of this parkland as a park and not charge anyone for it, I cannot agree with that. We are depriving people of the ability to plant trees here. We're depriving people of the ability to put any sort of amenity on this space in perpetuity. It's not something that's temporary. It's not something that is someday going to go away. Forever, the city of Minneapolis has now control over this piece of land, and it's no longer a park. So we have an obligation as park commissioners to replace that land somewhere else. We do have many areas throughout the city that we've identified as needing parkland. The only way really that we can find money for that is through this mechanism. And to not utilize it just seems silly. It would be the same cost if they were to put in an arrangement with any other entity, government entity in the city. As far as I'm aware, there is not another government entity that does not charge other government entities fees when they take their land and are using it for their purpose. So I will not support that kind of change. The other piece of this is that the easement cost is both a mechanism for land acquisition. It's offsetting the cost of the administration of that easement, because we will have to still do that work. That is part of our budget. It's what we built out. We assumed that we're going to be being paid fees to help cover some of those costs. We're not taxing people for that work because we assume these fees will cover it. And as well as that, we are also using it as a lever to try to convince other people that want to use parkland for their purposes to find somewhere else to do that. In this case, we're putting in a larger pipe and we're putting in a BMP at the end of the pipe, right? And that's not the way that we should be doing water management in our city. We should not constantly be saying parkland is the only solution. We should be saying, where do we have opportunities up in the pipe shed for water storage, for water treatment? Because if we are not doing that, we will eventually run out of parkland where you can put these things. And while I am very supportive of us doing it when we have no other choice or where the value is so incredibly high that it makes sense, that is not the case here. I have more to say, but I'll hold my comments.
Commissioner Benney.
Thank you, President Forney, and I actually agree with my two colleagues that just spoke about this is a common practice. It's also a very important disincentive. It is land that no longer has another purpose in perpetuity. It's also a regional park system land, and so that's held in trust for the people in the state. I wonder if I could call Director Wiseman up. I'm catching you a little off the spot, but I have a question about fees that we pay to the city of Minneapolis. And I didn't get to send this ahead of time, so I apologize, but I think you'll have these numbers committed to memory. No pressure. When we submitted our first budget internal budget request coming up with our levy amount, there were several things in there. And setting aside the Stormwater and the Parkway initiative, we were looking for some inflationary costs, the addition of 3 positions, and there was an item related to city fees. What was that number for city fees?
President Forney and Commissioner Benny, we pay the city of Minneapolis an annual overhead charge for all of the services for, that we utilize at the city. And it's over, it's about $1 million. The increase this year was between a couple of different fees. It was just over $200,000.
Right. So we had to increase our budget request, our levy request for about $240,000, and we were granted that. That got through the mayor's process without being stricken, which makes sense. But in order to pay for that, instead of the 3 positions that we had requested, how many did we end up with in the final budget request?
President Forney and Commissioner Abeni, 1.
Okay.
1 out of the 3.
So this is, I mean, I know maybe this is a bit of a sidecar. It's more general in relationship to the idea of intergovernmental charges, but I can't forget that this is part of how this works. And so I think for the reasons that have been stated, nothing personal, Commissioner Alper, but I'm not going to support this.
To the amendment, though, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No. Okay, I don't believe that carried, so on then to the main motion. Commissioner Alpert?
Thank you. Thank you. I would like at this point to make an alternative motion. It includes everything that was on the other one, except it keeps that clause, whereas MPRB has requested compensation for the proposed permanent easement, given the impact to regional parkland. It keeps that. And the motion reads, whereas regional parks within MPRB are underfunded and the shortfall is made up by the taxpayers in Minneapolis. Whereas the taxpayers of Minneapolis also financially support Minneapolis Public Schools. Whereas Minneapolis Public Schools is seeing declining enrollment and related financial issues, leading to the closure of school facilities throughout Minneapolis. Whereas many of these closed MPS facilities have park-like features, including playgrounds and fields, whereas in 2023, MPRB was ranked the #3 park system in the country by the Trust for Public Land, based on the inclusion of many of these at-risk facilities in the calculation of MPRB's park score. Whereas Minneapolis residents have a shared interest in retaining these MPS park-like features across the city of Minneapolis. Whereas the easement fee for this project is currently destined to the Special Revenue Fund land purchase reserve to be used on land acquisition. Whereas Mayor Jacob Fry has advocated for Minneapolis to become a candidate for UNICEF's Child Friendly Cities Initiative, and the announcement of this candidacy occurred in February 2023. Whereas Mayor Jacob Fry was instrumental in MPRB's stormwater initiative to increase the portion of the fee due to MPRB, whereas a net loss of playgrounds and fields across the city would make Minneapolis less child-friendly. And then 2 new resolved clauses. Resolved that the Board of Commissioners establishes a new fund specifically to be held as matching funds for city, county, regional, philanthropic, and state funds to address the issue of loss of MPS playgrounds and fields. Resolved that the use of this new fund would come back before the Board of Commissioners for approval prior to any action by MPRB staff.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Alpert?
Thanks. So speaking to this, this other amendment, I think there is a storm brewing across the city with places that we are not officially MPRB properties, but that we have used in our calculation of our park score, and that the people, basic citizens of Minneapolis, use and consider to be parks. Now, they aren't parks right now, but they certainly have park-like amenities, and we certainly have benefited from them as a city in the way that we describe ourselves in our portrayal. You know, as we've been in the top 5 for many years, and it is directly because of the reason that we're able to include places like Cooper School and their fields and their playground. And it has come to my attention that we have many of these cases of closed MPS facilities across the city, and it's a growing concern for me. I know it's a huge concern. MPS is broke. They're in huge financial straits. We, in many ways, share a similar oh, yes. Oh, yep, I better wrap it up. We share a similar shared interests in many ways, and so I'll come back to those. Thanks.
Thank you. I will need to pause here because it is 5:30 and we have time certain open time, so I'm going to read our rules. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during the open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up on the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on the people that are on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with the time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others here to speak, and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. 2 types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals are pending litigation and personnel issue. Please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed as anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with that policy. This board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each person, speaker, provide his or her name. We have 4 people who would like to, so I will give each person 3 minutes to speak. And the first one is Robert Marzek, and then after that is Ariel Weinstein. Robert, are you here? Lovely.
Thank you. Apologize for my voice, I'm sitting over a cold.
There's a microphone if you could speak into that.
I'm Bob Marzak. I reside at 36 Park Lane on Cedar Lake. We've lived there since 1987. We live next door to the encroachment permit, which was just granted adjacent to 34 Park Lane. For a little bit of background, there are several retaining walls on the east side of Cedar Lake that are legally grandfathered in via 1941 resolution. They're approximately 3 feet in height, and they protect shore erosion. The retaining wall in question is approximately 12 feet high, 200 feet long, and was constructed to fill in the hillside and create a flat 2,500 by 3,000 square foot lakeside backyard, effectively privatizing this large area for the new homeowner who's building a house there. I've been on a lot of boards, and that's why I came here, because I've been very frustrated in trying to deal with the park board here on this matter, because this permit, we believe, was not properly issued. And I've been very frustrated upon that. To get kind of to the matters, I guess, and what I've given to you, you've seen a bunch of emails in there. This building started taking process, well, I'll back up a second. The applicant actually filled out an application and a request to permit to rebuild this wall. The wall that was there was illegally built in 1994. There is no permit for it. So as they went forward with this, they were never getting permission for it, and I believe after the July 5th master plan, they would never have gotten permission to build this wall. But then comes along a letter from the superintendent approving it on July 20th. And I'm not going to get to why the letter was issued, etc., except the letter is not factual. And the permit was eventually issued based upon the facts in this letter. And the letter is in your mail, or I'm sorry, in your little package. And it starts in the first paragraph, second sentence. You request to rebuild a retaining wall and install plantings which are currently encroaching with permission. That's wrong. Never had permission. I've asked, and no one will produce a document say they ever had permission. If you go to the second paragraph, it talks about the encroachment permit granted in 1941. They never were part of this. There was no wall there in 1941. I think I put in your package, actually, some of the, what resolution came in 43 when he asked for an 8-foot dock. I don't think he would have just oversight 200-foot wall and 12 foot high. So what I'm asking you to do, as a board, and I think you have the obligation as a board to do what's right, is to go and, there's two questions to answer. Go back to the applicant and say, are you grandfathered in and approve it? Did you have a permit for the 1994 well? Without that, the whole process is flawed. They have nothing to get a permit on. And that, it's the letter that they used as the facts to get the permit, but the facts are wrong. So I would like that straightened out. And then it's easy, 30 days notice and the walls get removed. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Thank you, Bob. I hate to say it, but I'm going to refer you to our Assistant Superintendent. Lanny, is that okay? Okay, if you, well, follow up, but I appreciate it. The next person is Ariel, and then after that is Andrew Stevenson.
Good evening, all. Thank you so much, board members, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Ari Weinstein, and I'm a resident of Whittier neighborhood. I'm an avid biker, and I deeply appreciate the well-connected and well-maintained bike routes throughout the city and the surrounding urban area. And to me, living in Whittier, one of the big benefits is the ease of access to these really wonderful bike trails. I'm also a gardener at the Sioux Line Community Garden, and I've been a gardener there for about 2 years now. And my life has been really enriched by gardening with a friend of mine, by tending my plot, meeting with and learning from fellow gardeners, and enjoying the green space of the garden within the neighborhood. It's really my belief that these two recreational pastimes of mine should not be in conflict with one another. And I appreciate spending time at the garden and having nearby access to the greenway too. As I've learned about potential plans to construct a 14-foot wide bike ramp through the Sioux Line Garden, I felt frustration in the prospect of a cement pathway going through the garden. The garden is a place where community members, where neighbors get to know each other, build intergenerational relationships, share knowledge about nature, share recipes with one another, and also add an extra bit of beauty to our corner of Minneapolis. Every year there's high interest, high demand, high requests to get plots in the garden, and we often have a pretty long wait list to join. So it seems that people in the community want this garden to continue to exist in the way that it does already. Though I don't wish to see the garden plots lost for a bike path, I really celebrate and I'm excited by the idea of a bike path that has an ADA compliant ramp that is being built near the Sioux Line Garden rather than through it. I've been inspired hearing from other people in the garden about the proposal for the Grand Avenue entrance for the bike path that would encourage a gradually sloping, wheelchair-friendly ramp on the south side of the greenway. The south side of the greenway, which is across from the community garden, features the walking lane to enter onto the bike path, so that rather than having to cross over the bike lanes, people, whether they're entering by bike, on foot, on wheels of other sorts, would be able to enter right into the bike path rather than cross the two bike lanes to get there. Additionally, we've seen that the south side entrance was successful over the 35W area, so it seems like this would be a viable option to bring this over to this stretch of the greenway as well. Additionally, this would be a really nice way to connect the greenway to bike-friendly Grand Avenue right by where I live. There's recently been really nice infrastructure put in for crossing and for better bike crossing over where Grand meets at Lake Street, and so this seems like it would be a great place to connect the bike path and the greenway too. And additionally, it would connect the greenway to the Carmel Market via Rana Way, which is a walkway stretching between Grand and Pleasant. So I want to thank you so much for your work in ensuring Minneapolis is bike-friendly, also ensuring that there will be a ADA-compliant greenway access, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Excuse me, Ariel. Next one is Andrew, and then after that is Mike Tate.
Hi, Commissioners. I will speak to a little bit of what Commissioner Alper presented there in the last resolution. My name is Andrew Stevenson. I'm a resident of the Howe neighborhood. And I stand before you today to present an exciting opportunity for our beloved city and our young residents who call it home. Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board has an opportunity to work with Minneapolis Public Schools to restore the unmaintained but still heavily used Cooper School playground and turn it into a vibrant and much needed playground and bike park that would serve a large area of our school currently without such facilities. The power of this school is located near the border of Districts 3 and 5 at 44th Avenue South and 33rd Street. The power of this project is multifold in that it addresses a pressing need within our community and fosters an environment that encourages physical activity, community engagement, and the boundless joys of youth. As we contemplate the future of this space, I'll share with you just a few reasons as to why this endeavor is so vital. It addresses that community need. The absence of bike parks in this part of our city has left a void for our young residents. The South Service Area Master Plan is the only service area master plan with only one bike park identified at Lake Nokomis. And these spaces offer children the chance to explore the world on two wheels, to develop a lifelong love for cycling, for which Minneapolis is so well known, and to enjoy a healthy and active lifestyle. It fosters healthy lifestyles. We all understand the importance of physical activity for our youth. By providing a bike park and playground at this location, we can give children a safe space to enjoy exciting, physically demanding activities that foster their gross motor skills, help them to achieve developmentally appropriate milestones. And this location offers nearby early learning centers, as well as other nearby public schools, an opportunity to incorporate play and cycling into their physical education programs. These spaces build stronger communities. Bike parks and playgrounds are not just places for recreation, they're gathering places for the community, as you well know. It's where parents come to watch their children learn and grow, where friendships are forged, and where bonds between neighbors are strengthened. The heavily used Cooper School playground, that's now scheduled for removal, is a testament to how these spaces have created a vibrant and connected community. They improve safety. Safety is paramount when it comes to providing places for our children to enjoy outdoor activities. By updating the playground and creating this bike park, not only will safety issues for the children that play here be resolved in the structures, but this thriving community space will increase the safety for the neighborhood as a whole. It's often the case that unmaintained and derelict spaces see an increase in vandalism, which we would hate to see happen at Cooper. Sadly, Cooper School's park space is not alone in becoming derelict due to the lack of maintenance. Recently, I learned the Tuttle School in Northeast Minneapolis has also lost their playground, with no replacement on the horizon. There are 2 more playgrounds in North Minneapolis that are risk to suffer the same fate. If we're looking to be a high-ranking city known for our beautiful parks, having multiple parks in disrepair that count towards our scores is not the direction we want to be headed in. I encourage you to consider this proposal with an open heart and a visionary spirit, and think about the opportunities we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike, take it.
Good evening. I always got to bring my props. I can create a program just by planning. I'm here today again to thank you all for accepting something last week to build the new resurrected North Commons Park. I encourage you to not stop trying to run or raise money to build the other one. But I do want to thank you for accepting something. It was a long 14 years getting here to this point where a lot of people, including this building, didn't think we'd ever get here. But the faith that I have in my community and the drive that I have for children, I prevailed. As a community, we prevailed. And we got the right people in the right rooms to give us the right money. And now we're moving on to something that is more beautiful than anything that I ever imagined would happen 14 years ago. So I want to thank you first. But I also want you to start thinking about what it's going to look like. You heard a lot of stories last week about programming, events, safety, but none of it was on paper. So to me, that's just a story. Until it gets on a document that the Minneapolis city people can look at and hold you accountable to, it's just a story. And I know the stories. They're made up. There ain't been 150 kids nowhere. And again, we just can't keep being told things that are not true without you guys verifying it. And I know you think, well, staff's going to tell me. Staff's going to. But how about you? Excuse me. You can hear me. How about you?
No, please do, because
Right now?
it's on TV, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
How about you folks try to get out to some of these parks that ain't in your neighborhood and walk into them and verify and trust what you see and what you hear. Because I travel to your neighborhoods and I know the differences. And until we get to equality, which is fairness, we can't get to equity, y'all. Quit taking and using that word. Jane Miller brought that word here 8 years ago, or whatever that was. And it got us $300 million and $500 million in road work. Correct, Mr. Ryan? Let's get back to the fairness across the city for these wonderful children, of which we should be looking out for, and our future voters who will take care of us as we continue to take care of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now close the open time, and would you like to finish? Okay, Commissioner Alper.
Yes, thank you. And I believe the clock was not on for me, but I think I have about a minute and a half left. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this forward tonight for you all. I realize, I think this is a small change from where this fee is destined. It's land purchase reserve to be used on land acquisition. So this would not be substantially different than the current resolution, but I do believe that it would be strategic, very strategic, because what worries me most, and I know the speaker in the audience brought up Cooper School, which was what has brought this to the forefront, but we know that MPS has a fiscal cliff that they are kicking down the road, but sooner or later, May 2024 is when the plan for their school's transformation is going to come out. And we will see, most likely due to declining enrollment, what additional facilities are going to be closed. And I think this would set us in the position to be more strategic instead of just reactive. As I mentioned before, I was trying to say that I believe we have shared interests. We serve many of the same constituents. Playgrounds, I definitely believe are add to safety, vibrancy. I believe it fits within our mission. And I do want to just draw attention that any use of this new fund would come back before the Board of Commissioners for a vote. So I'm not saying a specific allocation or a specific place. It's not substantially different than the current resolution, but I believe it is being strategic, and that's why I'm proposing it tonight. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. Many of my previous arguments apply to this resolution as well, and I will not be supporting it this evening. And I neglected to mention last time, so I'm going to do it right away this time in case I ran out of time. This resolution is an administrative resolution for something in my district, and this was not discussed with me prior to being submitted to the board for consideration. So I would again just ask that commissioners take the time to reach out to the district commissioner for which the business that you're suggesting an amendment for is occurring in. So we're at least aware that you're going to be amending something that directly impacts the districts in which we represent. Again, this is an administrative resolution that's being utilized to change policy. And it's not an appropriate thing for us to be doing. We also have the problem that MPS has over and over and over and over again told us that they want us to develop amenities for them to utilize on our park land using park budget dollars, yet they refuse to help us identify and obtain the funds required to do that. They will not use their budget or any funds that are given to them for that purpose on any land but MPS land. I see absolutely no reason for us as a board to start finding ways to fund improvements on MPS property when we have so many intense needs on parkland already. And I've already made the other points about the purpose of the fee and where it should be going and the administrative costs associated with it and the need to be acquiring property to replace the property we are losing. So I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President Forney. I also would just like to echo with what Commissioner Musich said and what I said prior, is that I respect Commissioner Alper's attempts to think outside the box, and I do think that maybe we can consider ideas of what to do with these kind of fees. I also know, I mean, I think it's general knowledge at this point, but two of us up here are also MPS teachers. I'm looking at you, Commissioner Menz. And I know that any time we would consider any sort of collaborative effort with MPS, it needs to be done on high-level stuff strategically. They have some issues. So Cooper School is dear to me specifically. I went to school there and I got beat up on that playground, so thank you. So I respect the idea of what it means for the neighborhood, but to me, that is a big can of worms that I don't think this particular resolution grants that kind of opening for it. So I won't support it, sorry, thank you.
Commissioner Benny.
Thank you, President Forney. Asking, I think, either Ms. Downey or planning staff, is there a policy related to this type of fund? So regardless of the use of the space or the use of a permanent easement, because there could be multiple reasons why somebody would be granted a permanent easement, not stormwater only. But anyway, is there a policy about where these funds are directed typically or always?
President Forney, Commissioner Abene, the land acquisition funds that these permanent easements are always directed to is to replace parkland within the system. As noted by others tonight, we are losing capacity to use this land fully as parkland, so that parkland is replaced through this fund.
Thank you. So I think for those reasons too, I'm not going to support this either. I mean, I see where you're going, and Commissioner Alper, maybe there's some other opportunity to sort of think about some options, maybe in the upcoming budget to think about this, or for the next calendar year, the work that we're going to do. If we see this as a risk to Minneapolis or this kind of a recreational amenity in our city, maybe there's something we can start thinking about. But I think we have to think a little bit more planfully about it. So,
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. I think that this is a really good amendment in order to really push us to think about how our two entities are working together in strategic ways. And Commissioner Alper, I feel like that pressure to figure out how to put policy forward in strategic ways. I'll be supporting the amendment because I think that we need to, look forward and try and figure out what our plan is for surplus properties through the school district in a more vision-oriented approach as well. Because NPS is going to have surplus properties now. We should be working with that partner to figure out how to acquire that land or figure out how to manage that in a really strategic way. So I commend Commissioner Alper for bringing forward this amendment to push us in that direction. Thank you.
Superintendent Bangor? Okay, you would like Commissioner Schaefer first.
Sure, I'll just say that, these easement fees are going into the land acquisition fund. And I think we could consider, if there were opportunities for properties related to Minneapolis Public Schools, to consider using some of those funds possibly for additional land acquisition. So I do like the thinking of trying to maximize what we have provided the community and not be going backwards. But I think we also have to be strategic around some of the issues that the other commissioners have also aptly detailed.
Superintendent Bangor.
Thank you, President Forney. I do want to just remind the board, for purposes of knowledge, that Director Umphrey presented to the board a summary of MPS and MPRB fees and costs that were reflected between the two organizations. I have the document in my hand here, and then the summary, if you want to know specifically about what the Park Board does do and works directly with MPS, it's in this document. Some of the very basic things I can tell you is that NPRB invests $314,000 on playgrounds, $200,000 on fields and courts, $307,000 in annual maintenance and repair costs, as an example. Besides the multitude of things, we look at basically the number of hours that we, both MPS and the Park Board, look at time that they use within field use. But I want to make sure that that's available to the board. If you'd like me to send that, I can send that. I think if the question whether or not this board or this organization works fully with MPS in relationship, we can again share that information and not get to the point where we say that we are not working together. We are. And MPS is receiving tremendous amount of benefits from the Park Board. And I want to make sure that's very clear. So if you like this document, again, I can share it. and start to really get to the real narrative of what the park board does for this city and for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you for that input, particularly Superintendent Bangor. I think that's very critical. So all those then in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
I believe that it did not, it failed. So on to the main motion. If there's any lights on discussion, and I'm assuming that the superintendent does not want to speak to it. Anyway, Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, thanks, President Forney. Just a quick question. I had some email exchange with Ms. Downey and Mr. Schroeder about the final updated agreement. Did it get put out in that last packet? I didn't have a chance to go and check. Okay, thank you.
All right. To then the motion, or the resolution, please signify by saying aye. Or wait a second, I believe that this is an easement, so we need to take a roll call.
Yes.
Secretary, if you could call the roll.
Sure. Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alpert.
Aye.
Commissioner Benny.
Aye.
Vice President Crudup.
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye, sorry. That action carries. So on then to administration and finance.
Second from planning.
Whoever is.
Did we pull
One more from
resolution
planning, I believe.
2023-185?
Oh, I'm sorry. I overlooked a very, very important one. I super apologize. Who is reading this one? Is this co-chair Benny?
Sorry about that, yeah. I'd like to move from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2023-185, a resolution naming the overlook at East 44th Street and West River Parkway within the Mississippi River Gorge Regional Park, the Horace W.S. Cleveland Overlook.
Second.
I love it, a lot of seconds. Okay. I don't see any lights.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
we have a light. Okay. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. When Minneapolis was initially deciding how to build out its park system, it took its cues from a number of people, one of whom was Horace W.S. Cleveland. And his belief that the beauty of the natural world was of paramount importance to be preserved by the people of this place that were establishing a community here really is the reason that we have the River Gorge as a park, the reason that we have Minnehaha Falls as a park. And his love of the natural world is what gave that to us. It's taken us 140 years, but we're finally acknowledging this man that took the time to passionately implore policymakers of the time to value the natural world. And sitting up here with 8 other people that passionately adore the natural world, as I do and as Horace W.S. Cleveland did. It's just beautiful to be here tonight, having this opportunity to vote on acknowledging his contributions to our city, then and now.
I too am very grateful for this, hopefully to be passing. It's been a few years in the making, but it still is wonderful. And what really excites me is that we are going to have this done before the American Society of Landscape Architects are having a conference here. So they will be very pleased to be acknowledging a pillar in their community. So on that, all those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That action carries. Okay, on now finally to Administration and Finance Committee.
Madam President, you should note that I believe there was 6 votes. I think under the charter, we need six votes to read.
Did you want a roll call?
I think it would be a good idea.
Okay, I think we will redo that. I'm sorry. Secretary, would you please call the roll on Resolution 2023-185?
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Nay.
Commissioner Alpert.
Aye.
Commissioner Benny.
Aye.
Vice President Crudup. President Forney.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes and 2 nays.
That action carries. On then to Administration and Finance, finally.
Excuse me, on behalf of the Admin and Finance Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2023-179, a resolution approving a lease agreement with A&M Business Interior Services, LLC, DBA Emerald Blue, leasing commercial space at 3104 Pacific Street North, Unit 102, located within Above the Falls Regional Park for a 10-month term commencing November 1st, 2023, at the rate of $14,500 per month, including utilities and tax.
Second. Not seeing any lights. I am going to ask the secretary to call a roll since we need a roll call vote.
And I did second that, Secretary Pro Tem Brooks. I seconded it. I was
Oh,
just
I
letting her know.
apologize. I didn't
I
hear
didn't
you.
know if she heard me.
I did not. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alpert.
Aye.
Commissioner Abeni.
Aye.
Vice President Kruder. President Forney.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
On to the next resolution. That action carries, excuse me.
I'll move Resolution 2023-183, resolution approving change order number 1 with Sunram Construction Incorporated, contract number COM 0006841 for the Dickman Park Sport Courts and Site Improvements Project in the amount of $52,422.24 for a new contract total of $349,772.24 and amending the 2023 capital improvement program to transfer $20,000 from the Lind Bohannon Park project in the 2023 capital improvement plan to the Dickman Park Sport Court and Site Improvements Project.
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. And so to the chair should be the one who reads from the Admin and Finance. So
Thank you.
resolution, go ahead.
Resolution, I will move Resolution 2023-177, resolution approving change order number 6 with TMG Construction Incorporated, contract number MP-000001388 for the Mary Merrill Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Headquarters Building Human Resources Office Rehabilitation Project in the total amount of $6,710 for a new contract total of $433,485.05, transferring to the project $6,710 from the Mary Merrill Headquarters Building Reserve Fund, approving contract closeout for the Human Resources Office Rehabilitation Project, and authorizing final payment of $6,810.
Second?
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to unfinished business. Resolution, if somebody would read the first resolution, I'd appreciate it.
I will read Resolution 2023-192, the resolution approving an amended agreement between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis in the form of a redevelopment contract relating to the Upper Harbor site lying within the Above the Falls Regional Park and related to the advancement of a park at the Upper Harbor site.
Second.
Not seeing any lights. Oh, is somebody, yep. Commissioner Bennett.
Sorry. Thank you, President Forney. I guess I did not, and I apologize, I had a weekend that I couldn't put toward this, agenda, but I don't quite understand what's going on here, if you could just help me a little bit. So this is essentially platted as right-of-way, city right-of-way, but it'll be operated as a parkway. Is that right? And it's also, the one thing I noticed is it's something like, will not be managed as city right-of-way with regard to like franchise agreements and things like that. And I guess my question might be, what's the point of it being a parkway? And then also, I support it, but I just want to understand what the point of this is. And do we have any other segments that we call parkways but might really be platted city streets? Is that what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
President Forney and Commissioner Benny, I wonder if it would help to have Julie Aldrich run through a presentation, because some of these and other questions might be answered as she walks through it. This is a project that's been evolving for years, and there's lots of complicated history to it. And hopefully Julie's presentation can unlock some of that mystery and provide you a better insight on some of the questions you might have.
Looks like people would like to hear. Julie, please, welcome.
Good evening, President Forney and Commissioners. My name is Julie Aldrich. I'm the project manager for the Upper Harbor Park project. I'll share a brief presentation with you this evening to provide an overview of the project, review the key provisions of the revised redevelopment contract, and present the Parkway MOU for the Upper Harbor project before you this evening for consideration. These resolutions, 2023-191 and 2023-192, request approval of revised development terms and an MOU for a Parkway Road in the continued implementation of the city-adopted Upper Harbor Coordinated Plan. The UHT site is located in the McKinley neighborhood of North Minneapolis between the I-94 freeway and the Mississippi River, adjacent to the Dowling and 33rd Access roads. This future parkland is currently owned by the city. Parkland proposed for Upper Harbor is within the park boundary of the Above the Falls Regional Park. The master plan for Above the Falls calls for acquiring properties necessary to establish the adopted park boundary on both sides of the river and, as funds allow, develop parks and programming to create an interconnected park, trail, and parkway experience for North and Northeast Minneapolis residents. The coordinated plan approved by the city in 2021 shows the anticipated development of the larger Upper Harbor site, while the details of the development will be determined over decades. The interface between the park, Parkway Road, and adjacent land uses is an iterative process, and coordination will continue long-term. The current plan maximizes flexibility to allow MPRB and community members to respond and shape the park as the area changes. Development partners include the MPRB, City of Minneapolis, CPED, and Public Works, MWMO, United Properties, and First Avenue Productions. Within the development vision for the larger UHT site, 20 acres of public space comprised of a Parkway Road and park spans the entire length of the UHT property along the riverfront to the east and development parcels to the west. Much of the park is linear with a 5-acre central park space. Linear park areas feature the Parkway Road with parking, which will also serve as a city street with separated bike and pedestrian trails, vegetative buffers, a gently sloped vegetated shoreline, and stormwater treatment areas. The main entrance to the parkway and park facilities will be via Dowling Avenue. Connections to the north and south beyond the park are planned to create continuous riverfront access and green space and can be completed with further acquisition. When implemented, Upper Harbor Park will be a key achievement in the Above the Falls Master Plan. This exciting and transformational project will build on the momentum of numerous projects implemented along the North Riverfront in the past 10 years. The Upper Harbor project will add 20 acres of public space, with 12 acres being new parkland to the MPRB system, 1 mile of restored shoreline and public access to the riverfront where there currently is none, and 1 mile of parkway added to the Grand Rounds. Over the course of 2022 and 2023, much work is occurring in preparation for the park development. Select demolition of industrial structures, site grading, shoreline restoration, and portions of the Parkway Road have been completed to date. These images show current progress of work on the park parcel. So the image to the left is a good up-close view of the kind of that 5-acre park space that I mentioned and kind of how that's shaping up. And in that lower left-hand corner of that image here, you can see one of the BMPs as part of the district system is starting to take shape. And then the upper right photo shows the north end of the site looking south, and you can see, I think, is best highlighted by how much green has established this season. And then the lower right image shows the site about midpoint of the park to the south. And this image highlights a good portion of the Parkway Road, which is in place at this time. At this stage in the process, the city and the MPRB are executing a number of legal and contractual agreements that authorize work to continue towards land transfer and park implementation. The revised redevelopment contract before you this evening formalizes commitment between the MPRB and city regarding roles and responsibilities for the land conveyance and execution of the park construction project. This contract details the obligations, rights, and responsibilities of both parties and specifies the standards and conditions that will govern development of the property, and includes conditions for land conveyance, minimum planned park improvements by the MPRB, parkway infrastructure improvements and road MOU, an REOA agreement for a district stormwater system, and funding allocations. Since prior approval of the development terms for Parcel 2, the city and MPRB have worked together on site preparation and construction sequencing for our respective construction projects. During this time, nitrogen contamination was found in soils on Development Parcel 2. The work to prepare for and remediate that contamination has impacted the schedule for the land transfer and park construction. As a result, some changes are necessary to the land transfer terms approved in 2022. The list includes a final plat that conveys 12 acres to the MPRB via fee title, Parkway Memorandum of Understanding that provides the MPRB jurisdiction over 8 acres of public right-of-way, funded and constructed by the city and operated as a parkway by the MPRB. A recorded district REOA for the district stormwater system, a nitrogen remediation agreement between the city and the MPRB, a revised relocation agreement between the city and Xcel Energy, and an easement for water main to serve the UHT development. Approval of these revised terms is needed to allow for the transfer of the land to the MPRB and for the MPRB to begin our park construction project. And now I'll summarize the key components of the Parkway MOU that accompanies the redevelopment contract tonight. The Parkway MOU before you tonight formalizes commitment between the MPRB and the city regarding respective roles and responsibilities for the Parkway Road, platted as public right-of-way and named West River Road North. It designates as Parkway that part of West River Road North described in the plat of the Upper Harbor redevelopment and transfers full jurisdiction of said Parkway to the MPRB. This includes conditions for platting, design, construction, operations, maintenance, and funding. Key provisions of the MOU include that this will not be a city-managed right-of-way and will not be subject to city franchise agreements, but shall be an MPRB-controlled parkway, subject to the terms of the MOU and a transfer of jurisdiction. $3.7 million in parkway improvements are being constructed by the city and include paved roadway with a thickened section, MPRB standard curbing, sidewalk, trail, roadway lighting for Phase 1 and future phase of Parkway Road, traffic signs, utilities, and boulevards. The parkway will serve as a street access to the adjoining parcels with planned curb cuts. No additional curb cuts will be provisioned without the full approval of the MPRB. The city will be responsible for non-capital repairs consistent with existing arrangements between the City Council and the MPRB for other parkways. And the MPRB will be responsible for determining closures of the parkway. The city will not play a role in approving or denying requests for closure. The MPRB has worked collaboratively with the city to ensure all required approval processes are met effectively for both partners. Past MPRB approvals have included the park concept plan in late 2021, the redevelopment contract, and funding acceptances in 2022. At this time, we need to process the revised redevelopment contract and Parkway MOU with the city, which is before you today for consideration. Following this approval process, we will be bringing the park construction contract to the board for consideration, anticipated in November or December, with park construction anticipated to begin in 2024 and completed in 2025. Thank you.
Commissioner Bennett?
Thank you, Ms. Aldrich. That was helpful. And one of the questions I asked prior to this presentation, do we have other parkways that are like this, where they're really right-of-way, platted right-of-way, dolled up to look like a parkway? I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
President Forney, Commissioner Bene,
if we look at West River Road, north of Plymouth, all the way to Ole Olson Park,
Oh.
that's a public right-of-way that's controlled under the city jurisdiction. In this case, right, we're calling it West River Road North. It will be a public street. It'll serve the function of accessing to those development parcels. But what the city tried to do with this MOU is that they give us jurisdiction over the operation of that parkway, different than West River Road north of Plymouth to Ole Olson. Does that?
That helps also, yes, that helps. So I think I recall what some of the previous discussions that I was kind of asking where the street grid was and why the city wasn't participating more with the street grid. So it's interesting to me because it seems as though that should be basic to any kind of development of this scale. I think the other question I would ask is the right-of-way, will it be essentially the same, how wide will it be? Will there be parkland on either side of the right-of-way? I think that's important from a vacation perspective. If it is right-of-way, vacation is required to go to adjacent parcels, so it'd be great if it's parkland on both sides of the right-of-way.
President Forney and Commissioner Benet, thank you for the question. The right-of-way throughout the corridor is generally 60 to 65 feet in width. That encompasses kind of the roadway envelope, that would be the pavement, and then on both sides, boulevard space, green space, in keeping with our traditional parkway character. On the east side, of course, that is our parcel, and that heads down to the river. Yep. On the west side of the road, we will have, just to the west of those boulevard spaces, then 6-foot wide public sidewalk. And then beyond that, that's where the right-of-way line is. It's a couple feet off that edge of sidewalk. In terms of kind of the formal layout of the right-of-way. In terms of kind of how parkland plays into that, I would share that there is an ample green space on the west side between the parkway and the planned development structures. And what's really neat about that arrangement is that that green space has been designed to be and hold much of the district stormwater system.
Yeah, that's great. But I think that if on the west side of the boundary of the right-of-way, if it's a private parcel, it would, if it ever is vacated, it isn't like parkland. I'm seeing a nod from Council Rice. It gets vacated to those parcels. So it's just a little different.
President Forney, Commissioner Benet, I'll note, however, that this is the only way to access those properties. So it will be a secondary easement, but it won't be a public right-of-way. And every lot in Minneapolis is required to be serviced by a public way.
Right.
So the logic in a future vacation would be remote.
I'm just saying
not impossible.
I'm just saying it puts us in a little bit of a different position than we often are on our parkways, where the roadway itself is not platted right of way and adjacent on both sides is parkland. So I'm done. Thank you.
Commissioner Menz?
Thank you, President Forney. Yeah, I got to be out at the site yesterday. It was pretty cool, Julie. I was out there and got to see what is going to be on that site in the next year and a half, and it's really exciting to think about access to the river for young people and the creativity that can go into that. So it's really coming together. So if you haven't been down there, get out there. And thank you, Julie, for taking me out there.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I went with Commissioner Thompson to tour it, and it's very exciting. But this is a very, very unique agreement that we're going into, and I really appreciate Commissioner Benet saying we need to keep our antennas out on it. It is what it is, and we need to move forward with it, but I do, too, also have reservations about it, and just hope that we will, like I say, that Council Rice will keep his antennas and others will. So on that, this is a lease, so we will need to take a roll call. So if the secretary will call the roll, please.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Musage?
Aye.
Commissioner Menz?
Aye.
Commissioner Alper?
Aye.
Commissioner Abeni?
Aye.
Vice President Crudup? President Forney?
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
Thank you. And I am going to ask, actually, the next resolution to be called out will be 2023-191, since it does relate to this. So somebody would please read that for me, I'd appreciate it. That's 191.
I'll move Resolution 2023-191, resolution approving an agreement between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis in the form of a memorandum of understanding related to the development of a parkway at the Upper Harbor site lying within the Above the Falls Regional Park.
And it's,
Second.
thank you. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
So just one small question, I think. So, and I think Ms. Aldridge covered that, but basically the agreement will be, as we have agreements with the city now, to do the maintenance of the parkways, but non-capital repairs, I heard. So we'll be able to retain control for capital improvements. That's a long way in the future, but, okay, thank you. Yes, I got nods.
In my understanding, we do not need a roll call for this.
I think that on this one, we should as well.
Okay. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Benny.
Aye.
Vice President Crudup. President Forney.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
Thank you. That action carries. So on then to the next resolution, 2023-180. Somebody would read that, please?
I'd like to move Resolution 2023-180, motion to take from the table Resolution 2023-180, resolution approving a construction cooperative agreement with Hennepin County related to street trees as part of the Lowry Avenue reconstruction project in northeast Minneapolis.
Second.
Okay. Not seeing any lights? Everybody? Okay. Then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. We don't need to do anything more on that. Okay, so the next resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2023-187, resolution approving a memorandum of understanding extension between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the Minneapolis Parks Foundation related to fundraising and other activities advancing community center improvements at North Commons Park.
Second?
Thank you. Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Drum roll, we are to the presentation of the superintendent's recommended 2024 budget. Yahoo! Superintendent, take it over, or Director Reisman, or whoever we're handing it over to.
All right. Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. I'm going to jump right into this. So can you hear me okay? All right. So I'm very excited, very proud to present the recommended budget for 2024. First, I want to say a few thank yous and slow it down a little bit, just how we got here. And we'll walk through that through the budget. But I wanted to make sure that to say that I'm very proud of this budget this year, what I'm presenting to the board. It took, it takes a lot of time and effort from staff, but I wanted to first thank the board for your direction and for your really clear direction for the staff to move forward. I want to make sure that you all know that I heard the board, listened very closely to what your concerns, your needs, your visions, your wants, your passions. And this budget reflects that. The staff have worked very hard, and I wanted to make sure that we did hear you. And as we present the budget, I hope you see those real numbers and the way the budget reflects the board. I also want to make sure I thank the staff. They did a tremendous amount of work around this. When I came into the major meetings that we had in this room, when I was talking to all the managers, directors, and particularly the executive team, I was very clear that we wanted to stay within our current service level, which means that anything you put forward into the budget, there's an impact, and then you need to look within your department to realize those impacts. And if you don't find it within your departments, you go to the division, and within the division, you look at that, and if you cannot find it within the division, you look across at other divisions within the organization to find those impacts and to balance the budget out directly from that. It was a really great process. And then if that doesn't work, then it comes to the executive team, and we sit and we work through the budget directly to really meet the needs of not only the organization, but of course, the direction of this board. So I wanted to thank the staff personally for their really incredible work that they did to understand the directive that I gave them, to look internally at our organization and to find those impacts and find those budget needs that are within that. So thank you to staff. They did a great job. I also want to make sure I also thank Director Weissman and Manager Paul Rosen. They are literally begin this budget process at the beginning of the year. They work tirelessly, and I cannot thank them enough, to Julie and Paul, for their work, their knowledge, their skill, and their dedication to this organization. They are consummate professionals, and I think that they're the best, and I would say that they're probably the best in the country, but I'll leave it at that. So they're really amazing people. So thank you to our director and to also for Paul Rosen. So with that, I'll begin the budget process. So as we were working through this budget process, there are some things that we had to do at the very beginning. Part of this was how we were foundationally setting and developing the 2024 budget that will be before you today. And I want to walk through a few things just to be able to kind of give an understanding of how it was formulated and how we start to really look at what we're going to bring forward to this board. On April 12th, we had the adoption of the Parkway and Stormwater resolutions, which was significant. Resolution 2023-54 was requesting the City of Minneapolis to increase Parkway paving and related infrastructure investments. The second one around that this board put forward and was committed to was the Resolution 2023-55, requesting the city to provide dedicated substantial stormwater utility fee funding to support management of the MPRB-owned stormwater infrastructure on park property. Those investments are included in the mayor's 2024 recommended budget. And I can't say enough how this, as I said before, is an incredible legacy moment for this board. I'm grateful for your support and your direction on this. This was so important. And we are in process moving forward. Right now, if you know, all that are in the know at this point, there was a notice of intent to introduce at the next regular meeting for the ordinance amending. So that will happen at the next city council meeting on the 2nd of November. So we're moving. And this is really exciting and very legacy work. And I can't thank this board enough. And I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to do with this going forward. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the budget. So thank you, board, for that. On May 23rd, budget retreat discussions with the board. So we reviewed the budget process, the history, and the financial projections. We identified budget priorities and funding strategies that the board has put forward. And we assessed the current service level and maximum property tax levy. And we're grateful for your diligent work and your tireless days that we had to work on this, and I really appreciate the board's direction and effort, so thank you for that. On June 23rd, the results of the State of Minnesota legislative session, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this. I'm going to first, another thank you, of course, to not only our delegation and what they provided for us, I'll talk about more, but I also want to thank Lobbyist Rice, Council Rice, the different hats you wear, so thank you for your tireless work. Pamela Gokamar, Frankie Johnson, and Tom Workman. What an amazing group of folks that we have down at the state capitol. I remember calling Brian multiple times, and you could hear the intensity in his voice. You have to know when to call Brian and when not to call him. And you leave him to his measures, and he does an amazing work. So thank you, Brian. And thank you to Pamela, Frankie, and Tom. They did great work. And so just to recognize, we're the largest funding allocations to MPRB in decades. Amazing. The infrastructure bill projects in both one-time and increased ongoing funds to regional parks. I remember signing the bill right there on our parkway, which is amazing. And we tripled the state support for MPRB youth employment. So we did incredible work. We're grateful to the delegation, grateful to the work we've done that to get to this point, and we have a lot of exciting things coming forward. So to continue, of course, the foundation, how we developed this budget and worked through it was September 23rd, adoption of the maximum 2024 property tax levy request. The commissioners voted unanimously to request the Board of Estimate and Taxation, thank you, taxation levy request of 5.35%. This includes current service level, which I talked about earlier, we call it the CSL, the youth investment that we know that we are obviously very excited to have and are moving forward with it, and the strategic direction D, care for park asset investment. And also the request that we put forward aligned with the mayor and the BET, and we had sat in the mayor's office and negotiated this, and grateful for those all, you are in the room, and it passed, and the MPRB maximum tax levy request of 5.35%. Very grateful for that. I also want to recognize and make sure that I acknowledge the board, what the board's commitment is. The board is committed to serving the youth of Minneapolis. It's been very clear. We'll reflect that also in the budget, and we also understand the $2.6 million that we have received that we are continuing to implement, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The board's caring and stewardship of park assets, the caring and stewardship for the environment, and identify new funding sources for the park system. And this board made very clear that that is their mission and goal, and we are moving that forward, and we will also, again, reflect that in discussion with the budget. So I do want to talk now, just briefly, to give some background around the strategic directions and performance goals adopted by the board in May of 2022. These are very important because they lead the foundation for us to make sure that we are, again, hearing this board and responding to what not only am I measured on, but the rest of the organization and staff. So in the budget, when we talk about strategic direction, almost did it again. 1 second here, wait a second here. Reduce, there we go. Gotta pay attention to that. So in the discussion around that, it talked about reduce the carbon footprint, implement resiliency projects in service area master plans and the ecological plan, and to analyze park visitor modes of park access to create baseline data for future decisions. So when we talk about the department budget actions, and you'll see that through all of the different 5 strategic directions, they're built already in the performance goals. So I won't repeat it as I go back through each one of them, but just recognize that those are already built into the performance goals. So we're really excited if you have seen, of course, the renderings and the animation around Graco Park building. It's the first net zero building in MPRB's system. What an amazing, incredible place it's going to be, built across the river. And also, of course, I have to brag and say there'll be a Spark studio in that particular place. So very excited about that. Also, the exploration of the Excel Energy Solar Rewards community, and that's around, I think, solar arrays and solar panels, but it's really, Lyndon Wordsworth talked about this, and we're very excited about the work that's going to be going around that, which we'll share more about. So very, very excited about that one, and it was very informative to sit with Lyndon in the room as he walked through that and to see where we're going as an organization in the future around solar rewards. Very exciting. And also the formal criteria for evaluating new equipment purchases and replacements to reduce fuel consumption, minimize pollution and emissions, and improve operations. And I know just recently we shared a very simple thing as mowers, push mowers. And I just brought that, I think, the last time report of officers as just one example. There's a lot more, but we continue to really explore that and make sure that we are looking at the future of our organization around less fossil fuels. It's very exciting. And also, as we keep going here, sorry, change this over here. Strategic direction B, cultivate each community's place. Good, I changed it. In honor for cultural traditions in Minneapolis parks. What's stated in there is enhance the unified organization-wide volunteer management and enhance community safety and park police engagement activities. Within the 2024 budget, again, as I mentioned before, department budget actions are built into performance goals. And if you remember last year, we began to address really park performance goals. This year, we really focused, of course, on our positions that were adding capacity to the volunteer engagement. So that became a really solid focus for us. And so within this position to add capacity to support volunteer engagement, we're talking about a volunteer program aide our horticulture crew leader, a certified part-time .75 FTE Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden, or the EBWG, program administrator. So we're really investing in that and very excited to see that come forward. We also are very clear about our Indigenous acknowledgement training and also our Indigenous reconciliation plan. And I want to share really briefly, I got this from staff a little bit earlier, on some of the things that we're doing around that Indigenous recognition is we have progress that we've been going through right now, and we are working, of course, with Carrie Day Aspenwald, who now is a consultant, which is very exciting. So Carrie Day is working with us. She's the Indigenous Parks Liaison, and she's already working through that, and that just recently happened, so we're very proud of that position. But some of the things that we're doing is a government-to-government coordination. We talked about the event support at Awamini, partnerships for job training, specifically around park police and environmental stewardship, interpretation at, Indigenous interpretation at Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden, and Bede Makaska Pavilion, which will have its launch here on Friday of the grand opening. So if you have a chance to go see it, you'll see acknowledgement of Indigenous folks there at the site. So it's very exciting. Programming that we're doing currently at Waterworks, cultural use and access opportunities, identification of site significance, renaming, for example, Sibley Park, and engagement of local Indigenous leaders. So we're working very diligently on this, and staff have been doing a great job. And we anticipate in 2024, we'll be directed to organizational planning and day-to-day and longer-term strategic thinking regarding our relationships and connections to the Indigenous community. So we're really working hard at this, and we were committed to it, and we will continue to move forward on that. And our comprehensive plan is very extensive about that too, so very excited about that. So those are the things that we're doing there within Strategic Direction B. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything else here. Okay. Strategic Direction C. Implement quality youth and intergenerational programs. So within that, the board was commitment to implement quality youth and intergenerational programs and ensure its success through several areas: program capacity measurement, multi-tiered program evaluation, and enrollment tracking. And as you know, I've been very dedicated to data, not only around the qualitative, but the quantitative, but the qualitative work. Staff have been working very hard around using Power BI and using dashboards to give this board and to give the community more data around the work that we're doing, what we commit to and what we provide, so that it's not just words, that we are actually tracking this and showing it. And that's very important, I would assume, to the community and to this board, to the city council, to all the residents, that we have true data of what we're doing within our facilities, and not just words, but actual data. In the 2024 budget, this includes the year 3 of the 6-year funding agreement with the city. And of course, that's the $2.6 million. Commitment to youth, the lever that's been pulled for us that is directly to youth. The property tax levy increase of $260,000 each year to 2027. And then the final year, which is next year, of the ARPA funding. I would be remiss if I don't mention that in 25 and 26, we do have a gap. There's 25, a gap of about 600,000, give or take some dollars, another 400,000 in 26. So those are always on our mind, and we have to be aware of that coming forward, but that is a reality of this. But by 2027, $2.6 million will be in the general fund for youth of Minneapolis in our budget. And then we also talk about the free youth program in areas of the city with the greatest need. We know that you all know, of course, our ACP and ACP 50, our work that we do free programs through all of our parks, and to also recognize if there is ever a fee base, we do have scholarships built in to all of our parks. No child is turned away at any of our parks, none of them. And we also are talking about our upgraded online registration system, ActiveNet 2.0, which was launched, and it's very exciting. And this improves user experience and support data collection. And what I'm very proud about this is not only the front-facing access to ActiveNet, which gives the users a lot easier way to navigate through this, but behind it, which we're really excited about, is the data that we now can kind of work towards, the things that we need to give information back, and tracking and information that we require sometimes to report back. So ActiveNet 2.0 is very exciting, and we're very proud of the work that's being done, and the work that now we're going to be able to implement through that and the data we can draw from it. It is a new direction. And there's a team of wonderful people who I can't name out right now, but that did some great work around this. And then as we continue, through part-time inclusion staff hours for Rec Plus, a really important position that we have going forward, the increase to fees based on market rates, and we can talk more about that, but I want to make sure the board understands it's always market rate. The Naturalist Program Coordinator, focused on youth and teen programs. Very excited about that position. And then also the youth employment funding of $1.5 million received during the 2023 legislative session. And I want to make sure I thank Senator Fateh and also Representative Hassan for carrying this. And as you all know, this will go directly into our Teen Teamworks. It'll be in youth employment. With this money, we can hire more teens and get them into the green infrastructure jobs, the green jobs that we have around our parks, around our city. So you'll see more youth and young people working in our parks, getting the experience that they need, also putting some money in their pocket, which is a very good thing, and really kind of getting them to the point where they start to see other opportunities in our park system around green jobs and green infrastructure. We're talking everything, and Marilyn, who's here, could go into some really amazing work that we're doing with these young people, actually watch them do. So very, very excited about that, and thank you so much for that funding, and we're going to do some great work. And I also want to remind also that Representative Hassan said this very clearly, that we're focusing on the Cedar Riverside area to really get a lot more Somali youth into this program, because one of the biggest things to support for her was around that. And so we made a very intentional push in there. I think we had about between 20 to 30 youth for the first time through the Cedar Riverside area, which is very exciting. And so we're doing the hard work, and we'll continue to do that now with more funding to get more young people into our program. All right, strategic direction D. Care for park assets and meet evolving needs and practices. What was in there was increase the rate of parkway repaving and reconstruction. Check that one off. Well, increase the percentage of assets that are within their expected lifespan, which we built into as we know, into everything we're talking about. Establish the level of service standards for the top 10 assets within the park system, and increase the advancement of the policy items identified in the system-wide master plan implementation tracker. So again, for the 2024 budget, which you'll see, is the parkway investment beginning in 2025. Stormwater fee and investment in 2024, which is very exciting. And so those two, I can talk about that but here we go, right? The money's there, now we're going to start to really act upon that, and very excited about that. And to acquire and implement the next generation of asset management software with enhanced capabilities. So very excited about that work coming forward. And if we keep talking about strategic direction D, park projects and system analyst to support the work to identify and implement an asset management lifecycle. And you will recognize that that is the one position that we got in the tax, and that's that one position that you'll see in there through our property tax supports this position. And so that's the one that we have, and again, I think they're going to do great work. And then as we talk about the work, as I mentioned earlier, within our staff, the work that they've done, the reallocation of resources to fund needed positions in the asset management department. And some of the things, again, I talk about the brilliance of our staff, is to reclassify vacant horticulturalist to a horticultural crew leader, convert seasonal park keeper hours to a full-time park keeper, to convert a mobile equipment operator, MEO, hours to a full-time MEO, and also a new HVAC technician. Really critical positions that are needed for the organization. So, one sec here. And as we look into strategic direction E, steward our natural resources. What it talks about is natural management, growing public tree canopy, and also improving water quality through the BMP management. So again, within the budget, as we go through this, you'll see some really great things added here. So to enhance the natural area management with ongoing state operations and maintenance funds. And that means we're adding a volunteer program aide and seasonal natural resources specialist. The other one around that is implement the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. So we're adding an engineer and increase the part-time provisional staff hours. So again, we heard this board, not only in the volunteer piece, but also now getting this engineer, again, for our Stormwater Enterprise Fund, and that's just the beginning. We also make sure we always talk about planting at least 2 trees for every tree removed, focused on the 2 major heat islands within the city through the ARPA funding. And then also, we're participating in the Urban Tree Carbon Offset Program through the partnership with Green Minneapolis. So again, we believe and very proud of the fact that this work is being done within our budget. And as I turn this over to Director Weissman, I think that was my last slide. Yes, it was. I'm going to turn this over to Director Weissman, who will now go through the rest of the slides and give you more detail and specifics to the work we have done. So thank you for your time, and I'll be back up here at the end. And I'm going to turn this over to Director Weissman.
Thank you, Superintendent and President Forney and Commissioners. I am Julie Wiseman, the Finance Director for the Park Board. These budget materials are all available on our Park Board website at www.minneapolisparks.org/budget. I am going to walk us through the department highlights, the fund and department highlights. So the first fund we'll talk about is the general fund. In the superintendent's office, there is, we eliminate the grant and donation administrator, and those funds were used for other needs within the general fund. So as the superintendent talked about, finding things within department, division, or across divisions, this money was utilized across divisions. Communication and marketing has a increase to their contractual services for the development and implementation of a multifaceted advertising campaign to improve awareness of and participation in park programs. Park Police sees a slight increase in Park Patrol agent hours due to system equity investment. In the Deputy Superintendent's office, the Finance Department, we are adding an accounting technician due to increased workloads within the department. To help fund this position, I am eliminating part-time urban scholar hours. We have a slight increase to P-card rebate revenues and an increase to the enterprise fund overhead charge. For visitor services, there's a slight shift in staffing as we continue to make sure that staff are accounted for within the activities and funds in which they work. So it's just a small shift from the enterprise fund to the general fund. And then we're going to use one-time use of the regional park amenity fund to replace the dinghy boats used to access the moored sales boats. They are extremely past their life, and we're excited to be able to replace those. In asset management, the items that the superintendent hasn't already talked about, we have a reduction in contractual services that are helping to fund the HVAC technician, and then there's a slight increase to seasonal parkkeeper and MEO hours related to the equity investment in the MPRB entering into an agreement to add 2 dog parks to the MPRB system. In environmental management, we have the conversion of part-time hours to a full-time naturalist program coordinator to focus on the youth and teen programs, a slight increase to material and supplies, and a slight decrease to contractual services. For forestry, there is an elimination of a full-time MEO based on department needs, so forestry department needs. And those dollars are reallocated to address other divisional needs. So that elimination helped fund the items that are being funded within the Environmental Stewardship Division. In recreation, we have added a full-time athletic program specialist, part-time provisional staff hours, and officials' pay increase to support athletics. We're adding 3 seasonal pool managers, 1 at each outdoor pool facility, to help for the management of the operations and the grounds of the pools, and will allow the lifeguards to be able to focus just on the water. We're adding revenue and some provisional staffing at Phillips Pool as we take on hosting the Adult Master Program that is being displaced by the YWCA. Where there is increase in adult athletic revenue based on league and participant expansion, and increases to non-MPRB team youth field permit fees and water park entry fees based on comparative market rates. In youth and recreation center programs, we have, I'll just mention that the part-time inclusion hours are supporting Rec Plus as we continue to have families on the waiting list in need of inclusion services. We have a decrease in contractual services, largely due to the elimination of a contractual relationship with Revolutionary Sports. So other general fund initiatives and changes. The superintendent mentioned the enterprise asset management software. The annual increase to ongoing software costs are being funded through reallocations of resources within the general fund. And because this software also supports the enterprise fund, an increase to the enterprise fund overhead charge. For free youth programming, this will be of great interest to commissioners. In the summer of 2022, we created the free youth programs and the fee optional sites for the Rec Plus program. And at the time, as you remember, the commissioners at the time shifted fee and charge dollars into grants and donation dollars, a pretty significant dollar amount. That grant and donation amount has not been able to come through fruition, and so it has created an out of balance situation in our general fund. So with this budget, we are reducing the grants and donation expectation by over $500,000. And how we are doing that is through the elimination of that, the decrease in contractual services in the recreation department that I spoke of, and then recreation and environmental stewardship divisions, a portion of their revenue increases that they are recommending in this budget. So between the expense reduction and the revenue increases, we are able to reduce that obligation in grants and donations by that amount. The superintendent does not recommend any changes to the free youth program structure in 2024 as we continue to work with the board and staff to increase free equitable youth programming. Investments in our operations facility continues with a transfer to our capital project funds. Our parkland acquisition fund has an allocation annually that's at $275,000, just over $275,000. That is retained. In our special revenue fund for 2024, we have 4 distinct programs going on in this fund, two of which started last year and are continuing, but two new ones. So the Environmental Management Natural Area Management Fund, we are establishing this special revenue fund using $500,000 of ongoing state operations and maintenance funding to create a budget of $500,000. So we are taking we have been allocating $100,000 a year to this activity, and we now are taking $400,000 of the ongoing lottery proceeds dollars that we will be receiving to increase it to $500,000. And we're shifting it out of the capital project fund into the special revenue fund because this really is a special revenue fund activity. With these dollars, there are, that is funding the volunteer program aid and also 3 seasonal natural resource specialists. There's also contracted work for greater diversity of management tasks and support for additional professional contracting included in this as well. The second new one is environmental management with the youth employment. So the state direct grant to the MPRB providing $750,000 in both state fiscal year 24 and 25 for a total of $1.5 million to be used for youth employment and training programs. Again, this will allow for more youth to work more hours. Really, it expands what we're able to offer. So we're excited to have this implemented. This is a one-time appropriation and is available to be spent by June 30, 2027. So the money, if it's not spent at the end of 24 or the end of 25, we still have until June 30th, 2027 to spend the money. And then the two existing ones that continue is the $500,000 that's allocated in 2024 that will provide the two trees for every tree lost in 2024. And then, of course, the urban tree canopy offset program is accounted for in the special revenue fund. In the enterprise fund for our deputy superintendent's office, visitor services has a slight increase in revenue and expenses to implement a new no parking sign process. And then the slight shift from the enterprise fund to the general fund of the staff time. In recreation, athletic golf operations, we're increasing golf fees based on comparative market rates. We're increasing golf cart lease rental expense as that has risen higher than inflation, and introduction of golf simulators at Columbia Golf Course. So that's an exciting new venture for the park board. And in our ice arenas, we have an increase to ice rental fees and turf rental fees based on comparative market rates, and also an introduction of wall and or rink sponsorships for corporations. And then the other item is, of course, the general fund overhead charge is increasing in the enterprise fund due to the additional finance support and the enterprise asset management software costs. For our enterprise capital program, this provides for the use of approximately $1.8 million of enterprise fund reserves and includes an ice arena market and feasibility study. Columbia Chalet will see window renovations and the acquisition of the golf simulators and some of the improvements that need to be made to get those into Columbia. And then Gross Golf Course clubhouse siding and equipment storage building. And then, of course, the allocations to several rehab categories. Included in that rehab categories is an increase for turf management to support a turf management plan staff have developed for parks that frequently host citywide events. So you'll see that increase in there. And then our budget includes the establishment of a stormwater enterprise fund. And again, you are very aware of how this process is going to work, but it's going to sustain, protect, and enhance stormwater management system on parkland for which the MPRB is responsible. And it will cover the annual water quality and stormwater monitoring that was going on in the general fund is now being shifted to this enterprise stormwater fund. These costs are associated with the current NPDS Phase 1 permit requirements, where the MPRB and city are co-permittees. So the MPRB stormwater charge is listed separately on Schedule 8 of the mayor's recommended 2024 budget. And so the 42 cents consists of 26 cents that already existed and paid for the education and monitoring, and 16 cents that is new funding and will provide $501,000 for eligible stormwater expenditures. So in the Environmental Management Department, the $501,000 of new revenue will provide funding for staff, a staff position, professional services, and contractual services to begin to manage MPRB's portion of the stormwater system and manage MPRB's stormwater best management practices and better comply with the permit requirements. We are adding an engineer position as well as more than 1,000 hours of part-time provisional staffing. The Enterprise Fund Stormwater Capital Improvement Program does not exist at this time. The superintendent's recommended budget does not include a CIP. Once the stormwater infrastructure is mapped and conditions are known, the MPRB will work with the city to increase the dedicated sustainable stormwater utility fee funding that will directly support the implementation of a capital plan. Our internal service funds, Information Technology Services has the second installment of a 5-year plan to establish an ongoing security camera replacement program that will eventually provide $250,000 annually. So with this second installment, they're up to $100,000, and they'll continue to increase. In the self-insurance fund, there is an increase to property insurance. As we all know, we have experienced quite a bit of property loss in the last few years, and that is directly impacting the costs of our commercial property insurance. And then there's a decrease in general liability insurance. For our capital improvement program, Director Arvidsson will provide you with a great update. What I'll just say in summary is that the neighborhood parks will have changes to it based on the amendment that was passed by this board around undeveloped parks. regional parks are seeing a lot of changes due to the funding that is coming from the state of Minnesota. And then the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund has an allocation of approximately $1.5 million funding both neighborhood and regional park projects. So now I'm going to pause as staff hands out your budget materials. And you are receiving a budget book, park funding fact sheets, the large CIP document, and the budget adjustments and attachments.
Thank you.
All right, so the first section of your budget book contains the budget message and highlights that we just provided to you. So the budget highlights contain, more descriptive information. So if there's something you have a specific question on, that would be an area that you could look for some additional information. The next section of the budget book is our strategic directions and performance goals. And this document has both the strategic directions, the performance goals, and then the budget actions. So I'm showing just one as an example for you to see how they relate. And of course, our strategic directions and performance goals guide our short-term implementation of our Parks for All comprehensive plan. And the performance goals provide by the measures by which we are being, that the superintendent and staff are measured during this period of time. And then the action plan lays out the 4-year action plans of the various departments that are associated with these particular performance goals. So this document will continue to be updated and will continue to expand over the next 4 years. So what's in your document right now shows the 2023 budget information and then the recommended 2024 budget information. And again, throughout the budget book, departments who have budget actions have their current year or the 2024 budget action in the budget book. And again, it is directly tied to the comprehensive plan and the priority strategies, the strategic direction, and performance goals. And if it's related to the racial equity action plan, as this one is, it also includes that identification. The next section of the budget book is the background information. And it includes the service areas and commissioner districts and the organization chart, as well as fund descriptions, acronyms. So now we'll get to the actual financial part of the budget book. So property taxes, you'll see we have $82.6 million for a property tax levy in 2024. That provides just over $4 million of additional revenue and equates to 5.3%. The park board makes up 7.5% of Minneapolis taxes, we are about 7.8 cents on the dollar of the total tax bill that a property owner pays. For local government aid, we see an increase in 2024 of to 9.6 million, which is a significant increase and is based on the results of this last legislative session as well as the formula in state law. In our general fund, we have a balanced budget of $103 million, and that is a 3.3% increase overall. So even though our property taxes are going up by 5.3%, our overall budget is growing by 3.3%. And you'll see the increase in both property taxes and local government aid. And then you will see a reduction in fees, fines, and other revenues. So that is, a large part of that is the shifting of the stormwater education and water monitoring out of the general fund and putting it into the enterprise fund. But it also includes some revenue adjustments that we have had to make to some of our fees and charges that aren't performing or coming back as quickly since the pandemic. And then you'll see the decrease in the American Rescue Plan Act. So that's the $260,000 that was shifted into property taxes. And 2024, again, is the last year of the ARPA dollars. So you see property taxes make up 79% of our budget, our general fund budget, so we remain heavily reliant on property taxes in our general fund. On the expenditure side, you'll see that we have a 3.3% growth. The increases to wages and fringe are the new positions as well as, or the new position as well as contract step increases and union contract amounts. And then operating costs, you'll see increases by 3.7%. So the inflationary factor that we've built into the general fund is a little bit higher than that, but again, we have shifted some expenses out of here and placed them into the enterprise fund. So by division, you will see that by percentage, the Deputy Superintendent's Office received the highest percentage, and that is due to the addition of the accounting technician. The highest dollar amount increase is in the environmental stewardship area, and then recreation. So our general fund 5-year projections. This document continues to evolve as we continue to learn things. And so this is slightly different from the presentation that I provided to the board when we set the maximum property tax levy for 2024. But you will see that up at the top, the maximum property tax levy of 5.35% for 2024, and then 25, 26, 27, and 28, where 25 and 26 are up to almost 6%, or over 6% one year and almost 6% the next year. Those are largely due to the system equity investments that I'll talk about in the next slide. So our system equity investments for 25 and 26, we have some significant operating costs that will come online as Graco Park is completed, the Upper Harbor Terminal is completed, and when North Commons is completed. Those are the three major system equity investments that we are starting to identify and plan for in our future years. We also have the Strategic Direction D. You'll remember back in 2023, this board had supported 3 professional level positions to support our care for park assets. None of those were funded last year. 1 was funded this year. And so we're asking for 2 to be funded in 2025 and asking for additional planning division staff in 26 and 27 as things continue to progress in our capital improvement program. So one thing I would like to just say verbally, I didn't put on any of these charts. The superintendent talked about the gap years, 25 and 26. And of course, we will be looking at various different ways to cover these one-time gaps, 2 years of one-time gaps. But one of the options would be for you to ask the Board of Estimate and Taxation to set a maximum property tax levy in 2025 that would get us to the 2.6 million, rather than waiting until 2027 to finally get there. What that would mean in this projection is that instead of 6.44% in 2025, you would be requesting 7.22%. So it's a really significant increase as you think about 2025, but I'd like you to start thinking about it, and we will be discussing it in the next months ahead of us. So our special revenue fund, you'll see the state grants and operating revenue increase of $500,000. That's the natural area management. And we're showing the natural areas management separately. For our enterprise fund, you'll see the indigenous acknowledgement right on this photo at Bede-Makaska. For our enterprise fund, our revenues are estimated to increase 10.1%. As you are aware, golf has really seen a great resurgence since COVID. That resurgence seems to be maintaining, and so we have been very conservative in how we project our golf revenues. So now we are more comfortable, and we have built in not only an additional golf fee increase based on comparative market rates, but also an increase for just how golf has been performing. You'll see that our balance in 2024 is almost zero. So that means that we're using the operating income in 2024 to fund the improvements, the MRF payment, the transfer to the general fund, and the debt service. So within our divisions and our functional units, you'll see that golf generates the largest amount of revenue. However, parking generates the highest net income in this fund. And then vendor concessions and agreements is the next one. We have increased revenue slightly for the concession building, the concessions opening up at Bidet Makaska. So we're all excited about that. We have the sculpture garden and waterworks that are still showing a net loss. So the waterworks, of course, has a pro forma, and it's not really expected to break even and start generating a profit until the phase 2 part of the project is implemented. Here is the Enterprise Capital Improvement Program. So you'll see there's $300,000 allocated here for the golf simulators. And then the regional parks at almost at the bottom, you'll see $60,000 for that, the permits reserve and turf rehabilitation. So that used to be $30,000 annually, and we've doubled it and increased it to $60,000 annually. In our Stormwater Enterprise Fund, we have $1.3 million that we're expecting to receive in 2024. And then in our internal services funds, we have a 4.8% increase in revenues, and then a small use of fund balance. And that small use of fund balance is in the information technology services area, and it's to do some one-time upgrades to our network systems that are needed to be done. Our personnel summary, we have in 2024, we have 633 full-time employees budgeted within this budget. That is 7 more, a net of 7 more than in 2023, which is a net increase to office and admin positions and a net increase of 4 to the frontline positions. I will now turn this over to Director Arvidsson, who will present the capital improvement program.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Wiseman, President Forney, Commissioners. I just wanted to show off this picture as a reminder that the capital improvement program is really about enhancing our parks, the physical infrastructure of our parks, both to take care of those assets that are getting old, but also to transform our system in the vision of today's users, right? So much of our system dates from the 60s, 70s, 80s. We're a very different city. And so I like to show this one. Last year I showed a picture of the pump track at Perkins Hill Park on the north side, which was the first one of those we'd ever built. And this is our first outdoor climbing bouldering facility at Keewaydin Park on the far south side of the city. So take a tour and see all these new fun things that we're doing. So in my part of the presentation, I'm going to go over the funding amounts in a little bit more detail. I'm going to touch on the equity ordinance updates again. And then, as I typically do, just a quick primer for all of you and those watching at home on how to read the CIP, and then I'll go over what the key changes really are that you're seeing in the CIP this year. So our funding amounts, for the neighborhood side, the NPP 20 line is on the top, and those are amounts that have been set in our agreement with the city. You'll notice that they top out in 2026 and stay level going forward. We expect that there would be another renegotiation with the city at that time so that our NPP 20 funds can keep up with inflation. There was a renegotiation a few years ago, and so you're sort of seeing that flat line. If those numbers increase, we'll deal with it in those future CIPs. The general fund transfer that Director Wiseman mentioned, the neighborhood capital levy is a pretty standard number, and then allocated park dedication. I'm sorry, I'm just noticing those numbers are incorrect on this chart, so I'll have different numbers later on in the presentation. On the regional park side, as we know, these numbers are much higher than they historically are. You can see that 2024 number. Within the CIP in front of you, there's $16.73 million from various sources. That's a huge number for us. It's actually not even all the money that was provided. Some of that has already been allocated by you, the board, and so it doesn't show up in the CIP. And I'll go through that in some detail later. But then you'll notice in 2025, there's a little bit of spillover from this session, and then we kind of normalize back to some of the estimates that we conservatively use to build the CIP heading on out. And you'll notice that one thing I should note, 2024 would not typically be a bonding year, but it was a makeup year for the legislature. So we do have another bonding year right away again in 2020, which would fund our 2025. And then you can see that zeroes out in 26 because bonding is typically every other year. So the capital program, just as a quick overview, uses updated 2023 neighborhood and regional equity rankings, and they have been calculated according to the ordinance updates that you approved about a month ago. And the most notable feature of that, which you'll see in the CIP, is that the neighborhood equity rankings are now split into two lists. We have developed parks and undeveloped parks, and I'll go into more on that later. And we also continue the recommended process that we have always used, which is that once a project is in the CIP, it doesn't really come out of the CIP, regardless of what happens with its rankings. But we use present day rankings, current rankings, to choose when projects might have to be delayed if we've got to do other things in the CIP. So you might be safe if your ranking goes down from getting booted out of the CIP, but it's more likely that those projects which have a lower equity rating would be more likely to be delayed. So that's how we use those rankings. So one thing I need to report on from way back in our budget retreat is one of the items that we noticed as an unintended consequence, or I guess in this case a discrepancy, or if you want to be real casual, kind of a glitch, under the ACP 50 metric. And ACP, remember, is an area of concentrated poverty. ACP 50 is an area of concentrated poverty where more than 50% of the population are people of color or indigenous people. So previously, the ordinance did require that all parks within the same neighborhood get the same community score. And this is a bit of a refresher, but when it comes to the ACP 50, that's very hard to calculate at a neighborhood scale as opposed to a census tract scale. So the ordinance was updated to actually remove this requirement as part of the work that you did. But we promised to review recent years and see if there were any implications from sort of not doing it the way that the ordinance specifically said. So we did find that 5 parks that were not already in the CIP should technically have had higher scores under the former letter of the ordinance, because other parks in those neighborhoods did have higher scores. Those parks are Chergosky, Tower Hill, and Bridalveil Gardens in Prospect Park, largely driven by the fact that Luxton Park sits in an ACP area. Holmes in Marcy Homes, because Marcy sits in an ACP area, and Matthews in the Seward neighborhood, because Normanna Triangle, an undeveloped park, is actually in an ACP 50. So there was a significant potential discrepancy at Matthews. 3 of those parks could have entered the CIP last year under strict ordinance scoring: Tower Hill, Holmes, and Matthews. The other 2 would not have still ranked high enough to get into the CIP. So after this year's amendment to codify those, if you were to re-rank them, once again, none of those parks would score high enough to get into the CIP. So I have a little bit of a chart here. So the first column on the left is the 2022 rank as it was published and as developed the CIP last year. So you'll notice, if I can direct your attention first to that bottom line, the lowest ranking park that got into the CIP in that year was ranked number 60, and none of the 3 parks that we are talking about were kind of anywhere close to that. But if you do the adjusted rank in 2022, you'll notice that those 3 parks do get ahead of what would then be the lowest park at rank 55. And then if you go to the 2023s with the new methodology, Our lowest ranked park to get in is number 46, and none of those 3 parks come close again. So in some ways, it is actually a 1-year sort of arc that they would have jumped in because of the way that the ACP 50s are geographically calculated, that would no longer hold under the current ordinance. So right now, our recommended draft does not rectify this error. And I can tell you this was a big conversation as we were developing the CIP. And the reason for that is that ACP and ACP 50 data have always been calculated by census tract from the very beginning. It's kind of impossible for us to do it any other way. And we feel that the intent of the ordinance has been to distinguish between parks with different adjacent demography. And that's what we were doing with the ACP 50. So when we look at a park's actual ACP 50 score as opposed to its neighborhood score, none of these parks would come close to entering the CIP, so we have, in this draft, left them out. So, how to read the equity metrics. We have a little bit of a new format on the equity metrics, in part driven by the fact that it's hard to compare rankings one year to the next, because we've changed the number of parks in the developed and the undeveloped. We have 2 different lists now. So we've also done some things on the back end in terms of the data collection, but I don't need to get into that now. So over on the left-hand side of the equity metrics, you have your park info, and then there's also color coding that shows if a park is already in the CIP or if it was added into the CIP this year. So it pretty easily highlights those that are getting the next level of ranking to get into the CIP. There are 7 equity scores in the blue columns, and those scores total for the total score column. And then that leads to the ranking. The CIP itself is a little bit more complicated, but again, on the left-hand side, we have project info, the park rank for 2023 only, because it would be hard, they have different rankings, different numbers last year, and the project itself. Most of those parks under the description have a general description of plan implementation, and that allows us to consult with the community when we implement projects to make sure that we're doing the things that the community wants to prioritize. In some cases, we have detailed descriptions when a park has a necessary project, most commonly our playground rehab program. And then there's a couple, in fact, I think there's just one right there, Fuller Park, a holdover from the pre-equity CIP, which does have the same description that it always had, in this case, a wading pool. Our CIP still shows the reason for inclusion in the CIP. And again, as I mentioned, those yellow parks, which are pre-equity, there's really only one of those still left in the CIP. Most of them have become blue, or green if it's a playground-only project. And of course, as before, we have 2 columns for each year, showing if there is any change, and if there has been a change from last year's presentation or last year's adopted CIP, we show that in red. The notes on the right-hand side provide some detail about why things might have changed. Hopefully, they're as clear as I can write them and it makes sense, but if not, you can ask me after the fact. Just want to reiterate kind of where we are with NPP 20 as we move through. I think of NPP 20 as being in phases. There was a phase 1, which were really the parks in those communities with the greatest need. There had been the least investment and the most historic institutional racism in these parts of town. And those parks got investment right off the bat, and we're starting to actually get through all of those parks and move to phase 2, which are the parks that are kind of tired or declining. They're the ones that sort of look like they need some love, and they can be scattered all across the city. And they tend to be ranked between that 35 and 80 range out of 102 of these these developed parks. And just notice that in the 2029 CIP, the new parks that are being added, true to form, are Creekview on the north side, McRae on the south, and Armitage in the southwest. So we're starting to move around, and if you look at the next batch that are not in the CIP but have the next rankings, we're touching pretty much every sector of the city. Again, with parks that have seen less investment in the last 15 years and are starting to see tired facilities. Phase 3 is going to be those parks that, frankly, 8 to 10 years down the road, they're actually going to need it. They might be in good shape now, but by the time we get to them, they're going to need those investments. So CIP changes from last year to this year. They're driven mainly by 4 things: the additional state funding, an increase in rehabilitation funding, a shift, the undeveloped parks metrics, and we're going to advance some projects for better implementation. So 3 neighborhood parks, as I mentioned, were added to the 2028-29 CIP. McCray Park actually was inadvertently left out of the CIP last year. That was a mistake that I made. So it's actually going into the 2028 year, and then the other 2 are in the 29 year. In addition, just as a kind of litmus test, 72 of the 153 neighborhood parks that we rank are in the CIP, 61 of 102 developed, and 11 of 51 undeveloped. So we're really cruising along on NPP 20. The CIP constitutes us, this lookout is we're a little bit over halfway through. We're getting there with the parks as well. So the additional state bonding, or the additional state funding. This is a little bit of a treasure hunt. So this slide is meant to be your navigation about where to find all the different things that we got. Like where did we hide the candy, right? So I'm going to go really quickly fund by fund and kind of point to where in the CIP you can find it. Because we get kind of these lumps of money and then we decide what we're going to actually spend them on, and then it has to fit in a certain spot, a line item in the CIP. So the additional regional parks bonding, the top line, the uses that we're doing for that is to replenish the 2023 CIP. You'll recall last year we had to almost completely wipe out the regional CIP and start over. Well, now we're able to put all those projects back. So that's one of the big uses. We're also talking about rehabbing 3 boardwalks and then additional funding for Eloise Butler. So the main place you'll find this is within the regional CIP. You're going to see a lot of red ink, and that's bringing money back into a lot of these projects. There also is a new boardwalks fund to take care of the 3 boardwalks. That allows us to have flexibility between them depending on how the bids come in, and we can write the grant with Met Council as a system-wide boardwalks grant and then keep the flexibility there. So we've created a new fund under the rehab categories all the way at the bottom of your CIP for that. Parks and Trails Legacy, there's a $250,000 extra for Lindale Park operations facilities. That shows up in the regional CIP under Chain of Lakes. The modernizing parks money is to be used for beach upgrades, portable toilet enclosures, and shoreline stabilization. And we actually have, again, 2 more new funds for the same reasons as the boardwalks that I mentioned. And then the portable toilet enclosures is going to show up in the regional amenity fund as an increase. It's a fairly small amount, so we're putting it into that existing fund. The general fund O&M increases from 2024 and the lottery in lieu from 2023, you have already approved the expenditure of that funding under Resolution 2023-173 a couple weeks ago. So that does not appear in the CIP anymore. It's going to show up in the true CIP that you get to look at online, but it's not in this document. And then the last piece, the lottery in lieu 2024 and beyond, is being used for safety and security in the regional parks, natural resource management, and regional pavement. So there is, again, a new security fund that we can use system-wide. We added to the regional pavement rehab, and as Director Wiseman noted, the natural resource money moved into a special revenue fund and doesn't appear in the CIP any longer. So you'll notice the natural resource management under the rehabs, it's zeroed out. It used to be 100 and it's zeroed out all the way across. We kept it in there to show the change, but that's now in that special revenue fund. Rehabilitation funding. The draft CIP does include a shift from the neighborhood capital portion of the for projects into the rehabilitation section. We've been hearing that the board is interested in continuing to focus on doing rehabilitation and potentially increase those dollars. And so we have done that in a couple of different ways. There's a total of 350 annually, in addition to 150 specifically designated to rehabilitate pavement at Neiman Sports Complex, which can't really get funding any other way. But the 350,000 annually that we are shifting, we're adding 150,000 to the neighborhood amenity fund. That fund can be used by our in-house staff to do a variety of improvements across the park system in terms of rehab. So provides flexibility for doing that across the system. And here's what I think is kind of exciting. We're actually going to we propose creating a new 11th NPP 20 rehabilitation fund called the Athletic Fields and Diamonds Fund. So $200,000 is allocated throughout the CIP to upgrade outdoor athletic facilities across the system. This can be done partially with internal forces and partially with external consulting. But the idea is, we're learning through some budget actions, that it's the fields and diamonds that are the most out of useful life of all of our asset classes and tend to be some of the lowest quality. We have, I think people sense that. There is definitely data that backs that up. And so we're proposing creating a new fund and putting some dollars into that. This shift can be absorbed without any capital project delays early in the CIP. But as you can expect, it starts to compound. So there are project delays necessary in 27 and 28 in the out years of the CIP in order to accommodate this shift. In your document, there are several graphics called shift analysis, and they have titles at the top, and that tells you how we use equity metrics to select which projects were delayed and which ones were delayed for which reasons. Undeveloped parks, we have two lists. Undeveloped parks have a new section in the CIP. This was another big debate, how we present this, but it's a new section so that you can hopefully easily see how much each year we're spending on undeveloped parks, and you can see their rankings against each other and not mixed up in the developed parks. So 3 of the undeveloped parks on the list actually show up already in earlier years of the CIP with projects underway: Murphy Square, the Mall, and Smith Triangle. So we've made the decision, the proposal to you, to leave those parks alone, to continue to fund them and move forward, even though they don't necessarily have the highest rankings, though Murphy Square does have a very high ranking at number 2. But we're not putting any new undeveloped parks into 2024. There's a lot of change in 2024 already, and it would only cause other project delays. Beginning in 25, we're going to invest approximately $750,000 a year. It started to shake out that way with funding amounts and without impacting the rest of the CIP too much. So it's the first time we're doing this. You can take a look at it and certainly let me know what you think. 3 of the undeveloped parks that were previously in the CIP were removed because their rankings were significantly lower. And then the last big CIP change I want to talk about is advancing projects. You may recall back in 2020, we analyzed funding amounts to make sure we were spending an equivalent amount in similar parks. We had a normalization year in 2025, which meant that some parks are having split funding. They might have funding, well, in the case of Botno here, as shown, funding in 2020 and also again in 2025. Some of the parks haven't been that difficult to pull this off on, but the 2 parks, Botno and Sumner Field, have been extremely difficult to manage in terms of delivering a small project and looking ahead to a much later big project. It's been challenging to address those. So for these 2 parks only, we're proposing moving that later money all the way up into 2024 so that staff can implement one big project at each of those parks all at once. This streamlines and simplifies community engagement. People know what they can expect now, and it also provides construction economies, and it'll only close the park once. Of course, there are trade-offs, project delays. The shift analysis does identify those delays. I can say that the Botno move is the much larger of the 2, and interestingly, the projects that would be delayed are also in District 1. So it happened to work out that way with the equity metrics, but we are kind of swapping District 1 projects in terms of their timing in order to get that done. Quick note on park dedication, and then I will close. We have about $1.2 million in 19 parks allocated in 24 and 25. Most of it augments existing projects, which we have to be pretty judicious about this in terms of staff burden. We do have 2 new standalone projects at Minnehaha Park. The South Plateau improvements can be implemented with our ongoing work around the walls and stairways by the same project manager. And then we are proposing getting ahead of doing some improvements at Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park, which is still a ways out in the CIP. And looking at the amphitheater and the pickleball courts. Those were determined based on community consultation that was led by Colleen O'Dell out of our office. So there's community guidance on what to invest in here. So far, as we look at park dedication, 62 of 86 of the neighborhood areas have received allocations. There are actually only 3 neighborhood areas that have never even seen any money come in. And then overall, we've spent about 57% of the fees that have come in since 2014. And that varies by service area. So we do track this, and looking at where the percentages are, that guides our consultations with the neighborhood across the following year. So last year we had identified, for instance, that Southwest was lagging a little bit, so we went into Kingfield and tried to find out a way to collaborate with the community to get some of that money spent. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Director Wiseman to conclude the presentation. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so the budget documents that are available online, which you have. The one thing I want to mention is the budget adjustments and attachments. It includes all the changes that happened in each fund, both revenue and expenses. If there is a benchmark or that comparative market rate, the benchmark sheet is included in here so that you can see how we're compared, how we determine the rate that is being presented. And then also it includes the racial equity tool that we use. So on the document, if it has an attachment B, that means there's a benchmark. And if it has an attachment R, it means there's a racial equity attachment to each of these. And then again, the capital spreadsheet, this is the big document that includes all of the information, including a lot of notes, and it includes some of that shifting. So this is a great document to look at for those. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. It was a lot of information. And again, I can't say how much proud of the work that's being done, but I know that the board will go through this diligently, and we look forward to your responses. What you see, I'm sorry, here, let me go back. Did we already say this one?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so October 25th, so these are just kind of some highlights here to see where we are in the process. So on the 25th, the City of Minneapolis public hearing on the 2024 tax levy and the 2024 budget. That time certain will be at 6:05. And this is the opportunity for the public to have public comments and our public hearings around the budget and to really give their input. So that's October 25th at City Hall. And that'll be the City of Minneapolis public hearing, of course. On November 1st, on 2023, the Admin, of course, and Finance Committee. So this will be, of course, the public comment on the superintendent's recommended 2024 budget. Time certain is at 6:00 p.m. The commissioners will review, and comments on the recommended 2024 budget will be at that time. Let's see here. So November 15th, the full board, the public comment on the superintendent's recommended 2024 budget during open time, time certain at 5:30. Also, of course, on the 15th, in the Admin and Finance Committee, is to approve the 2024 tax levy and annual budget. The goal at this time, of course, is to have the commissioners' amendments submitted and identified by this meeting. So we want to approve, of course, the budget at this time. And December 5th, 2023 at City Hall, the Truth and Taxation public hearing on the tax levy and budget, time certain at 6:05 p.m. And this will be the adoption, of course, of the AMPRB's 2024 tax levy annual budget. So this is just an important piece here. So to assist the staff, all of us in preparing the budget sessions. Questions or comments should be emailed to myself in advance of the meeting. So by the November 1st board meeting, or by November 1st board meeting, questions due by October 25th, and the November 15th board meeting, questions due to myself by November 8th. Once I receive that information, of course, it's disseminated across all staff in the organization, and then, of course, we respond and we send back questions or answers, but it's going to be important to have those deadlines and those dates so that we can get through our budget process by the 15th. So with that, I'm saying good. So with that, Commissioners, President Forney and Board, thank you so much for your time. I know this is a lot of information. We really appreciate your time. And again, we look forward to your comments, amendments, questions. We look forward to it. And I assure you the staff will be responsive and get those answers back to you right away. And we'll get to what I believe to be a wonderful budget. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the presentation. Really, this is the big lift now, gang. Any questions people have? I'm not seeing any lights. This budget was put together by staff using a racial equity lens. We'll all be given those tools as well, and I look forward to us all rolling up our sleeves and doing likewise, as staff has done so brilliantly. I really appreciate it. So I'm not seeing any more lights. So, excuse me, Commissioner Schaefer.
I just have a question on process. I really am wondering if we're going to tally up everyone's questions in an Excel spreadsheet that goes out to everyone. I just wanted to confirm that, or maybe you want to talk about that, because that was really helpful last go-around.
President Forney and Commissioners, that's exactly why we have the deadline dates of October 25th and November 8th, so that we can enter them into that Excel spreadsheet and disseminate them to the departments and staff who are associated with those questions and get the responses and additional information that you asked for to all commissioners.
Thank you.
Any other questions people have? Not seeing any. I thank you all. So I will move to petitions and communications, and I will start with Commissioner Olson.
I will pass.
Commissioner Abene.
Thank you. I was going to say something provocative to get Commissioner Thompson going, but she's not here, so I'll skip that. I was really looking forward, next time. I've actually, over the last couple of days, I've been attending the Minnesota Water Resources Conference in St. Paul. It's a huge conference of people that work in all areas of water resource, from science to practice to research and so on. It was excellent. And I have to say, I went to a couple presentations where Park Board staff, Superintendent Bangora, you'll be happy to know, some Park Board staff were making some presentations at this conference. And I have to say, particularly Rachel Crabb and Caitlin Chamberlain, there was a really interesting presentation on understanding really what's happening with the lakes and why we're seeing more phosphorus loading coming from inside the lakes, and it has to do with increasing temperatures and things like that. Huge attendance for those talks, and there was another one as well. So, great job. Thanks.
Commissioner Musich.
I'll pass.
Okay, Commissioner Cuthbert.
Pass.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes, on November 2nd, 5 to 6:30 p.m., we are hosting a district-wide meeting talking about community watering strategies. And so I'm really excited about this. We've gotten commitment from all 13 neighborhood board leadership reps, maybe not everybody on the board, but at least one or two from each board, as well as we're going to be inviting the general public, and of course, any of you are welcome to come as well. But some of our special guests will be Mary Bola, our own MT, our Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission rep for District 4, and Ben Shardlow of the Downtown Improvement District, who has done a lot of innovative watering strategies, as well as our own community forestry liaison that we new hired last year, Danielle, so as well as some forestry staff. So we're really excited about bringing the community together to hear what others are doing, as well as thinking about our own geographic neighborhood areas in terms of looking to next season. So, and that'll be held at the Kenwood Rec Center in their multi-purpose room. Thanks.
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. I just wanted to say that so I got the opportunity to go to the National Recreation Conference in Dallas. Commissioner Thompson was there as well, and some staff. And it was there was like 8,500 people registered for this conference around recreation across the country. And, this is the first time that I had gone, and you could tell that there were some seasoned veterans, not only in the national crowd, but in our crowd as well. And it was just a lot of fun to connect with staff. I even rode a mechanical bull, thanks to Mr. Yeager. So it was a lot of fun, but it was also really inspiring to see how much there is being done across the country and where we can really hone our focus into our recreation and our young people and what those recreation spaces could be moving into the future, especially around like inclusivity. I saw some really cool stuff around programming and how to like just keep kids really engaged in that youth programming. Saw a couple of presentations about skate parks and like the cost and like what the benefits are to the community, that there's an economic piece that's involved there as well. And just really inspiring to see what we could do with our facilities and leveraging that for the strength and growth of our young people and our families. And I was just really inspired. And next year I'll do it a little bit differently. Next year it's in Atlanta, but really enjoyed connecting with the staff and enjoyed the opportunity of going to do those things. So thanks.
Vice President Kudo.
Not a ton, but super excited. A friend of mine reached out with the Big Ten, looking to kind of spruce up one of our gyms because of a connection, and so excited to see what the opportunities bring as folks continue to think about the assets of the park board and what we mean to community and what we have meant to young people who are now adults and professionals that come back to try to make the space better for the next generation of young people. So excited about that. Super grateful because I had called Mimi on her cell from some random number, a bunch of folks, because I was like, I'm not the actual person to talk to. But I think Newman got out there and met with everyone. I heard great things. And so huge shout out to Newman for being able to fill in while folks were traveling at the conference. So that's it.
Thank you. Following the strategic directions, I attended the Awamni Festival, plus also Posters of Park, which to me, as far as supporting our strategic directions, they do cultivate, our and honor our culture, tradition, plus youth and intergenerational programs. I'm saddened that next year we will not be able to bridge, literally, for the Awamni Festival, but how that festival has activated those spaces always impresses me. And I have to say, I've been to Poster Parks, I think, just about every single time they've done it. And truly, this was the best artwork I've ever seen. It was really very, very inspirational. Hope you made a ton of money. As I indicated, did the Upper Harbor site walk. I don't need to comment about that. I think big shout out that we need to say as far as care for our park assets, and that's the fact that the refectory is officially going to be open at noon on this Friday. 11 o'clock is going to be the ribbon cutting, et cetera. So please all attend. 10 o'clock. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. That's right. We did change it. I apologize, everyone. Okay. Anyway, so really exciting things. Pimentos has been a great addition. I'm very, very excited about it. So I want to acknowledge that we've missed a lot of the staff that aren't able to be here today. A couple of them, one of them I think is celebrating a wedding anniversary. One of them is down under, literally. Anyway, but I appreciate the staff filling in, particularly our pro tem secretary, Brooks. I really appreciate your work and everything. And I also want to acknowledge, and I apologize, I don't have the official name, but the City Parks Alliance has honored our superintendent, and I'm so sad that he did not bring his crown to wear, but it is a gorgeous statue that he's gotten. Oh, he's got the pin, all right. Anyway, but I'm very proud. Really, I'm so proud of you for being a part of that. That's an awesome group. And on that, I will adjourn the meeting here at 7:58.
We have a.